Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our first UX3 conference. Tonight, we'll be talking about all the things and some crucial challenges junior UX people have when they are starting in UX. Some of the things that we all wish we knew when we started in the field. Firstly, I would like to thank our speakers, to Mike, Colin, Pranjal, Rob, and Jamie for taking their precious time and preparing everything for the slides and everything, because without them, this conference wouldn't happen tonight. And I would like to thank everyone as well who is on the call here with us. Before we start, I will just go through a few housekeeping items. Just to make sure that everyone knows how to participate in this event. So probably all of you know this, and I shouldn't even put the slide for this, but anyways, tonight all of us will be on mute apart from speakers, but anyways, you can post your questions. If you click on chat here, just type your questions here, and after every participant is finished, I'm going to read out your questions, and then time allowing, every presenter will cover all of your questions. Feel free to use reactions as well after the talk or during the talk. We'll be recording this session, and I'm going to send the recording later tonight or probably tomorrow morning. I don't know, I'll see when the recording is finished. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, before we start with the conference itself, I'm just gonna go through a few slides here just to explain to you what UX3 mentorship program is, what we're doing, and how everything started. So back in 2020, when I mentored for the first time after speaking to my mentee, I realized that a lot of junior UX designers, just like myself when I started, are facing the same problems. When you're breaking into UX, you have no connections, you don't have enough projects in your portfolio, and obviously you're lacking a lot of experience. So that's why 10 months ago, I decided to start the UX3 mentorship program, and with a huge help from my dear mentors as well. The idea was basically to pair UX grads with experienced mentors who share a similar career path, with a goal to develop their professional skills. The main goal of the program basically is to bridge the gap between education and workplace. Some of the benefits for mentees here, so all mentees that finish the program will have an extra project for their portfolio, plus certificate of completion that they can add to their LinkedIn. Also, during the 4-month period, they will enjoy one-on-one mentoring sessions with their mentor. And in this way, they will hopefully be one step closer to their first job in UX, because they will already know what working in UX looks like thanks to the output from their mentors. And the last thing, what very important as well, networking. We're a really small community here, UX3, but also everyone is very willing to help in any way that they can. I just decided to add some statistics here from our first round in 2021. So here you can see that all of our mentees said that they improved their research, prototyping, and design skills. Presentation skills, 83% of the people, and everyone said that their general confidence in UX improved. Also in our first round, 50% of mentees landed a job straight after finishing the program, while in our second round, 60% mentees landed a job even before finishing it. If you're interested in applying for a mentee position, feel free to do so, but it's starting from July 1st. You can check everything on our website, ux-3.com. It's very simple. If you have any questions, just let me know. There's my email address as well. Just a word or two about our mentors. All of our mentors are highly skilled UX professionals with at least 3 years of experience in the field. They're carefully chosen UX designers with all working in senior, lead, manager, and director position, also working in some of the best global and Irish companies. Some of the benefits here for mentors, knowledge, definitely, because when you're working with a mentee, we share knowledge gained through our career experiences. That's why being a mentor helps us to strengthen that knowledge in areas we don't use it anymore. One thing that we like to practice here on UX3 are mentor meetups, which I find very insightful. I think it's very beneficial for designers to talk with other designers that are outside of their company that they're working in. Also recognition, I think every employer will appreciate the fact that someone is taking initiative and mentoring someone. If not your employer, then recruiters and everyone else will. It looks very good on your CV. And networking, one of the most important things in these past 10 months since the program started, I met a lot of great designers that I learned a lot from. Also some stats for mentors. All of our mentors said that they improved their leadership and communication skills, and 42% of our mentors got promoted after mentoring with us. That's it from me. Anyways, if you're interested in being a mentor, I don't know who's on the call now, but whoever is interested, they can do so by just filling in the form on ux3.com. This is the lineup for tonight. So Mike, Colin, Pranjal, Rob, and Jamie will talk about various themes, all related to getting started in UX. So Mike is going to open the conference talking about all the ways he failed as a UX designer. Mike is one of our mentors. He's been with us since the very beginning. He's working currently as a product designer at Buymie, and the thing he loves the most about UX is the positive contribution to someone's life by talking to users and discovering their issues. I'll stop sharing now and I'll give you the seat, Mike.
I'll try to share the correct thing. So the ways I failed, so you're gonna be seeing more of these coming along. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, that's very good. Hello, everyone. Yeah, this is a presentation about all the ways I failed, not generally in my life, that wouldn't fit here, but as a UX designer. So I've added a couple of random animations to bring some more failure into this. And of course, I will only talk about everything that can fit in this presentation. As Valentina said, if you have any questions, please write them in the chat and I'll address them later. So starting a little bit even before I had my first job as a UX designer, one of the things I failed was that I kept focusing all the time in all of the wrong things. It's very easy to do that. It's very easy to start thinking that focusing on the things you are not good at, but you're going to get a job not of the things that you are lacking, but in of your strengths. So I would suggest all the people that are here to try to remove your negative thoughts and try to focus on the positive, because it's something that I didn't do from the beginning. This is something that I hope that today the guys will give you more ideas on how to do it, and including myself. I was looking a lot to get a title. So I wanted to get like a UX designer, and I hadn't realized that a thing that I could do was also to create my own title. And how does this work? My background personally was in economics, and I did a little bit of graphic design, and I couldn't manage to get a job as a UX designer, but I ended up getting a job as a graphic designer. And what I did was I realized that actually your skills is the skills that they will create the title of the job you do. So I was as a graphic designer, but because I had the interest in UX, I started applying within the company I was for UX positions, and I started contributing to some projects. And then within 2 years, I joined and I got the UX title that I really wanted, the project that I wanted to work for. And somehow as I said, I got to the job that I wanted. And as you might guess, I don't know how many of you are already got a job or if you're looking for a job, but I did a lot of mistakes, even more after I got the job. So let me. Okay. The first big mistake that I did was that I walked towards my team as if I was the messiah of product. It may sound funny, but reading about UX gave me this feeling that everything I learned was the single truth. I became quite dogmatic, and this is not a great way to be in UX design. Pretty much I look like this guy over there on the right. I don't know if you have met him before. And I approached my team as telling them, hey, sinners, I'm your savior. And this is not a good way to approach anything. And why is that? Because I found out very quickly that not only me, but every person in my team thought that they were the messiah of the product. So I'll show you some photos of my team. This was like the PM in my team. That was a developer. This was someone from finance and legal, the canteen manager, and actually even marketing thought that they're the messiah as a product. So everyone in the team has something different to contribute, and it's not true. It's not false. Sorry, they were the messiahs of products as much as I was. Everybody had to bring something in the game. So I wanted to be the best, and it's very related to the previous one. But being the best, I thought at the time was a great thing to say in your interview. I want to be the best. But actually, when you work with a team, and especially when you're a UX designer, it may not be the best approach that you will that you want to do. Actually, in design, we want people to fail, and we want people to fail quickly. Not people, but like the things we design, we want to test them and fail. But also striving to be the best comes with a lot of hardships, and you can ask Beyonce. She will tell you, or I was a little bit like that. I had in my power all the things that I've learned, and I thought that I knew all the rules, but I didn't make them. But sometimes it doesn't work like that. Then I discovered the power of I don't know. And I don't know, it's a thing that I want you to remember. That's why I added a lot of nice names here. So I added like very strong I don't know people, and like the last one, the strongest product possibly. Why I don't know is very important. Because if you say that you don't know, but you can find out, you're gonna uplift your presence the same way that I did. Designers are not there, especially UX designers are not there to know everything. We're there to find out everything. It was something that I couldn't understand, and especially as a junior person who wanted to prove that you know things, to want to prove that you can do things, you want to, to see something and directly judge it. And you will need it. You will need to do a lot of critiques, but finding out is what UX designers are there for. So I wanted to be the absolute expert. So that killed my research. And why? Because if you're, especially if you're working in a smaller company with the UX maturity not being very high, if you present yourself as the best, as someone who knows everything, if you read theory and you believe that it applies to everything you design at work, then there is no reason for your bosses, your managers, your team leaders, or anyone above you to, understand why you need to do research. At some point, you can get lost in this being the expert idea that you might also question if you really need to do research. And that's actually not great. I don't know actually was what changed everything. So I don't know, but I can find out was what made me go back to research. And if you work in small companies, it can be a little bit difficult to sell it sometimes. So I share here a pro tip from my own experience. What I did was I started realizing that I needed to focus early in my career more on research. And when I started finding out things that they truly benefit the company, I made sure that I would use them as much as I can in order to sell research more, in order to make sure that I will get maybe the tools I wanted to have access to, or do more surveys, have more interviews, and everything that comes with that. So you have to focus a lot on that if you're in a UX not that very mature organization. Three things that I wasn't ready with were I wasn't ready with quick wins, minimum viable. I always say that wrong. Minimum viable. No. Sorry. With I'm stuck. Minimum viable product and working with uncertainty. So, what is quick wins? When you are studying UX, or even when you work by yourself, usually you take an approach that you take a product and you completely recreate it from scratch. But this is not how it works. Or even when we work with specific features, we're gonna use the best of features in order to improve it. When you work though with a company, there are a lot of things that you cannot do. Sometimes there's no budget. Sometimes there are not enough resources to work on that. Sometimes you realize that there's a problem with the product that you're working on and you need to solve it as fast as possible. So there are a lot of quick wins. And because I didn't know it, it kept making me sad, making me feel as if I'm not working the way I need to work. The same with minimum viable product. the way that we work with a lot with sprints. So when you work with a sprint, you need to keep improving slowly. So again, it's very similar to quick wins. I wasn't ready for that. And it's something that I definitely believe that you will see it in your career. And working with uncertainty. As I said, there are a lot of times, for example, when you read theory, you say, if you see X happening, then you do Y. But it is very difficult to do that. Sometimes your analytics team or your developers didn't install a tracker well, and you have no data. There are a lot of things that can work with uncertainty, and you have to be ready that a lot of the things that you're doing will not be as straightforward as the theory that we learn. And as Beyonce said, perfection is the disease of a UX designer. I didn't say that, she said it. So I didn't realize also that I had to put a lot of work on things that no one would value. But I think this is not something that happens only with UX. You will see that a lot of things that you will work on, people will not understand. Like, for example, it's very common among UX designers to be remembered for a banner that they did or something that looked kind of cute, and people not realizing things that they came out of research or things that we really truly value among us. But as I say here, I use some of them in my next interview. I'm not sure if it looked really good, but everything you do is not going lost. Sometimes taking the pleasure of doing the things that you have to do is more important. I couldn't choose my battles. And this is a huge problem for not only UX designers, but for anyone that works within a team. Sometimes in teams, there are things that we cannot test. Sometimes there are things that they're not testable. Sometimes there are things that they don't worth you to fight over them. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe your boss will have a personal preference over a color, over something that it is minimal, that you may think that it hurts, or maybe you read that it hurts conversion or anything that you are working on. Choosing your battle is very important. Learning when you have to leave other people to win and not go exactly the way you want is an important thing, because in the end, your product is not your baby, is the baby of the full team. And it's very easy to do this, to feel like they all want to be the designers. It's something that designers will say a lot, but yes, sometimes everyone wants to be a designer, but it's not always the case. I didn't know all the ways to communicate better, and as everyone, I guess, I'm still learning. But since my beginning, things that I've changed are I let people win battles that aren't important for me. I want you to remember that if something isn't important, let someone win the battle. It's very hard, even if you're working with someone that, I don't know, their contribution to the product is minimal, which is, I hope it will not happen to your next jobs. Even then they have to win something. Otherwise, they will not be motivated to work and they will create problems to you. I thank, highlight, and compliment every slightly positive idea. And this is something that you need to think, even not only from the slightly positive, but even if the feedback that you get on something is completely ridiculous, a thing that you can do is get a distance with it. Close your laptop, sleep over it, and the next day see how you can see the good in it. Sometimes we see something and the easiest thing to say is no, but thinking over it and pushing yourself to see the good in it can make you a much better designer. I didn't know I had to teach people of what I do. And this is a big frustration among designers. We feel that people don't know what we are doing. But a thing that I will tell you is that actually no one knows what other people are doing. So you might think that you know what marketing is doing, what finance is doing, but in reality, that's not the case. Everyone has to teach each other what they do. So be ready to show, to tell your colleagues what you're doing and to explain them slowly and over practice, not just telling them. I think that I'm using a lot as an expression is that if we could say that design could be any scientific, UX design is the closest you could get to it. But yeah, as I said, that UX designers are not the only unicorns in the product, so we don't really know what other people are doing and how they spend their days. Another thing that came also while we were talking with the rest of the mentors is reading a lot of UX books, articles, and everything that comes with theory, especially with people that they work like in massive corporations that might be hard to get in Ireland, could make you feel that what you're doing is far from UX. But in reality, it is just part of the UX reality of that I've experienced at least. So what I'm saying is that some of the things that you see and you learn, it will not be easy to be done in daily basis, not in everything. And maybe you will be lucky that you will work with a lot of people in great teams and everything will be the same. But from my case, what happened was that I would see that I was not as lean in my processes as I would like to be, and this would bring me down. But I think that I believe that UX designers we are improvers. We're not perfectionists. So as long as you're contributing and you're bringing results step by step, then you should be happy. A soon to be very famous writer, which is me, says no real story can be realistically told through a written medium. And so when you read the UX books, take everything with a little bit of salt and see how you can fit that in your daily UX life. I didn't know that I'm so much better than the quality of the product I deliver. You will have definitely days that will be difficult. You may be in teams or in projects that you don't believe in, that you don't like, and or it can be someone in the team that will make your life miserable at times. But in the end, the output that you bring is not, it doesn't equalize you. Self-care is very important. And I hope you will see your skills and the projects that you work on to be getting better as you grow. But it is very important not to assume that you are as good as your job is. I didn't know also that it is okay if my first job, the first job that I landed wasn't exactly what I was looking for. It would be okay to move on to the next best opportunity. Sometimes getting the first job is really hard. And that's why you can get it in a job that maybe in the interviews you saw a lot of red flags, but just to get the title in your on LinkedIn, you are willing to take the risk. So as long as you see that it doesn't work for you, make sure to look out for the next best opportunity. In the end, the only reason that you're there, not the only, but the main reason you're there is to make money and be happy. And if this is not happening, then don't settle down. And I was saying that to myself probably at 2 o'clock in the morning, stressed when I couldn't sleep. So just want to let you know that it is okay to do it. If you have a good reason to leave a company, you should do it even if it's just 1 month that you're there. Lastly, I wanted to say that for all of you that you're going through UX interviews or that you will go in UX interviews in the future, I want you to know that UX interviews are the most difficult part of a UX job, especially if there are other designers that they are interviewing you. Now, a pro tip again, if you're new and you find interviews very stressful and you want to get on a UX job as fast as possible, try to interview with smaller companies that they don't have UX designers or they're not very UX mature, and you will find them much easier as an experience. And even if you don't get the job there, they can help you in order to build confidence and grow in the next interviews with a better company. That's all from me. I hope to see you at the next sprint, and good luck to everyone being here. And I'd suggest to make sure you capitalize on the network. You're not competitors with the people that they're starting now and they're looking for a job, but they can be the people that will get you your next job as well.
That's amazing, Mike. Well done. Clapping. Yay. Guys, no, I wanted to say first, I completely relate with the power of don't know and with choosing the battles. I think that's very nice said. Guys, does anyone have any questions for Mike? You can say it out loud. There's not a lot of people on the call, so you don't need to type it if you want.
So I heard you're a writer, Mike. Is there a book coming up?
In the next decade, for sure. I have to say, I used to work with Jordan in the same company, so I couldn't speak a lot about choose your battles. I'm joking.
Mike used to just absolutely destroy me in every meeting, by the way. No, I'm joking, of course. Like, yeah, really great working with Mike.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so if last call for questions, guys. If anyone doesn't have any questions, we'll just move on to Colin, if that's okay. Mike, good luck with your book, and thank you once again for presenting. So next up we have Colin. Colin has been with us since the round one, so he's currently working as a full stack UX designer. Colin has more than 5 years of experience within the field. He's passionate about augmented reality and virtual reality design and development. And the thing he loves the most about UX is the ability to collaborate with people that have completely different background to design. Okay, Colin, you can go. Colin will present working as a part of the team.
It's not actually working as part of the team, but I'll explain that in a minute.
Enterprise. Yeah, sorry.
I think, yeah, no, I think I forgot to update that.
Okay,
let me share my.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
All good. Okay. Thanks, Valentina. So my talk did kind of start as being part of a team, but it ended up evolving a little bit into UX in enterprise, and then the title that I picked was A Peek Behind the Curtain. So kind of giving a realistic expectation, or setting a realistic expectation for what working in an enterprise company is like in a UX team. And just for people who don't know, enterprise would be kind of classed as anything over 1,000 employees or I think $1 billion in revenue a year. So it's just a large company, and it comes with its own kind of pitfalls and quirks and stuff. So I'm just going to close the menu down. So the agenda, I'm going to go through some main takeaways, things that I want people to maybe remember, or the main benefits of this talk. A little bit of a disclaimer, a little bit about my background, how I got into UX, and then I'll talk a little bit about like LinkedIn bullshit and how that relates to the UX maturity of a company, and then my specific or personal experience with enterprise company, the pros and cons that I've seen, and then who is it for, and then I'll recap over the takeaways, and then any questions if people have them. So the main takeaways would be: don't wait for things to happen, make them happen. Take the good from all situations, and then be smart about your next steps. I'll kind of come back to that a little bit as we go through it, and I'll explain a little bit more when we recap on it. The disclaimer is, I'm not affiliated, or I'm not doing this on behalf of any company. So this is my own personal views. It's completely opinionated, and take it with a pinch of salt. You know, I've only worked in one enterprise company, and every company is different. They're going to have their own uniqueness. So this is a very personal view of this topic. The motivation for this is just setting expectations. So I was kind of shell-shocked when I came into my first job. And this is kind of just to shine a little bit of a light on that, what it's actually like once you get in. So that's pretty much it. So how I got started in UX, I previously was a visual designer. So my background is in visual design and graphic design. I used to live in New Zealand. I was a happy creative designer, used to do lots of posters and websites and stuff. I loved working that way. You know, I had a little bit of that Messiah syndrome as well. But I really enjoyed it, and I got really good feedback. So the company was a startup. It was only me and my boss that worked in it. It was a little design agency, and we were getting great feedback from the work we were doing. I used to thoroughly break down a brief, and I'd do competitive research and stuff on it before I knew what research was. So I was very thorough about the work that we did, and we would be provided a client brief. So any of the information that was there, I would brainstorm and have lots of mood boards and everything like that. And it worked really well. We ended up getting bigger and bigger and bigger clients. and we got like the biggest job we had with this really specific brief. So we did the same thing. We went through the work, or they went through the brief, and we like nailed it. We did a really good job. It was like real flashy, high-res images, like, you know, desktop first approach, everything that you probably shouldn't do. But the client loved it. It was exactly what they asked for. We went live for the event, and within like an hour, we were like bombarded with, you know, emails and stuff saying that the website is not working, it's terrible. You know, so it was a like awful experience, really, really bad. We ended up reverting to the previous site. So this was for like a 10-year anniversary of a massive event that was in the area we were in. And it was a disaster. It was really bad. It turned out that our users, that the primary user for this app that we built, or this site that we built, were middle-aged bikers who they didn't have any laptop or desktop. They only used their mobile phone. So they couldn't use it because of the high-res images and the load speed and stuff. So it was completely eye-opening. This was before I knew what UX was, but this was my first introduction to it. So a little bit about my background. I said already that I studied visual communication. I had kind of a visual background. Before I got into working in an enterprise company, I had lots of different roles, lots of different companies, all kind of UI based or like design based. I had one UX UI role before I got, and it was only a 6-month role, 5-month role. And it was kind of a mix of development and UX, so it wasn't really UX. I did a few courses, and then I applied for a job in a big company. In that company, I've been there for 3.5 years, and I've had a huge range of different jobs. I've worked on lots of different projects, probably more different projects than I have had different jobs before I got there. So really interesting. Where I'm looking to go as well, I'm really interested in UX for VR and AR. So I'm kind of studying, upskilling in that, and hopefully, you know, down the line, that's what I'll be doing. So getting into the actual topic, there's a lot of kind of bullshit that goes on with Instagram and LinkedIn in terms of you know, companies portraying the roles that you apply for and what you're expected to do and the requirements. This can be really daunting, and I know this from my own experience. It can be really intimidating when you're applying for a job and there's a list of requirements, you know, way more requirements. You have to know every method, you have to have every skill, you have to have X amount of years experience at this, and it's a junior role. And then you've also got a lot of people putting up, you know, companies getting designers to put up a day in the life of, and it's this real polished, you know, great company, and everything works perfectly and everything is super UX focused and stuff. But my experience is that's like just setting up for a fail. It's completely false. Definitely from my experience, but I think from talking to other people as well, it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. And I don't think, you know, there is the once you get in there, you're kind of set up for a disappointment. So not to be negative about it, but this is just to be realistic, I suppose. A recent example, and obviously this isn't specific for enterprise, this could be like a design agency as well, but a recent example, this happened to me. I applied for a new role recently in the last 2 weeks in my company, and when I was going through the job description, I highlighted there was about 30 requirements, 25, 30 requirements. I highlighted all the ones that I was competent in, and it was about 4. I highlighted the ones that I could possibly do with like guidance or with upskilling, and that was about 5. And the rest, I had no idea. I didn't know what they were, or you know, I just wasn't confident in them. So I met with the hiring manager. I talked to him about it, and he said, no, I was a perfect fit for the job, that this job description was kind of old and it didn't really reflect what they were looking for. And I think that happens a lot. I think there's a lot of copy and paste that goes on, and you know, it can lead to tears or to people not applying for jobs that they are really suited for. so this is me. So this is kind of what what I've seen or felt or I've heard or I kind of think about in terms of people applying for roles or people starting in a new company. So it could be my own experiences or what I've seen others do. And definitely there's a lot of like, I don't have enough experience for this role. Should I apply? Is it worth it? And then when you get in, it's like, I'm shocked there isn't more structure. I really thought this was going to be different. I'm quite disappointed. We've had a lot of people that are really nice. They're really talented, and they just weren't. They were kind of oversold a role, or they were told that it was very similar to what they've done before, and when they came, it was very different. And so there's been a lot of kind of negativity around that, and it impacts our environment as well. And yeah, I guess that's like what what I kind of hear from people as well. Like, what does this role entail? Like, they're confused about when they come in, what is this? What is the job? Like, it hasn't been clearly outlined in the brief. It was just a lot of requirements or in the job spec. And then ultimately, this isn't what I signed up for. And I'll have that twice. This isn't what I signed up for, and just they feel underconfident and demoralized about it. So this all kind of ties into having a really low UX maturity in a company. So UX maturity is, this is just a definition from Nielsen Norman, but UX maturity, it measures the organization's desire and ability to successfully deliver a user-centered design. And that just means how experienced or how mature is your actual design team, and are they capable at delivering, what they set out to do, and do they have the correct framework to do that? So there's a couple of different, this is just Nielsen Norman's chart. There's a couple of different ones, and they range from 1 to 5, 1 to 6. Basically, number 1 is there is no UX, no one's interested. There is no one pushing UX at all. So stakeholders don't invest in it. It's just non-existent. And then 6 would be completely user-driven. It's a fully focused, putting the user first company, which, I mean, like maybe Google or like some of the really big companies that do that. I haven't experienced this, definitely. One of the key things about those, the UX work is reproducible, so it's very scientific, which is quite difficult to do. But where I kind of see our company when I started was probably about 2, which is there is UX. It's called limited. There is UX, but there's no structure, there's no plan. It's quite haphazard, and where we are at the moment, so we have improved. So I've been here 3.5 years. Things have happened and shifted that have really, helped the UX team grow and deliver, do better work and deliver more results, really. So at number 3, where we're kind of at now, is it's hopeful. There are results coming through. They're inconsistent and ineffective. So we do a lot more work than we have to get results that aren't as effective as they should be. And we are still working on getting up, so to keep progressing this. And the way to kind of increase that is you need to take a small project. You need to have it be user-driven and use that as your kind of like your holy grail, like to show stakeholders that this really works. These are the results we get from having a UX-centered project, a product that's completely user-driven. So we're in the process of doing that at the moment, which is exciting. And the link down the bottom, if anyone wants this afterwards, it is worth. There's a lot of detail in the UX maturity model. I only kind of like high leveled it, but it is worth a read if you have time. So my experience in UX, so completely personal, when I started. So I mentioned this a little bit, but on the previous company I worked for, we weren't doing a lot of real UX. It was kind of, fake UX. We were selling that we were doing UX, throwing personas up. And I wasn't at a position where I felt I was growing. Like I felt I was quite junior, and I wanted kind of to be in part of a team and to be able to be mentored and to grow. So I started looking for jobs. I would filter like the briefs or the job specs, and I looked for exactly that. I looked for a UX role, possibly junior, that had a really structured, growth plan and stuff. And I found two really good companies that were doing that. So I applied to both of them, got an interview for one of them, and I met the manager, within a week. And then I got offered the senior role. So they had already hired a junior internally for that. And they said, based on my UI experience, that I could be the senior and I'd be trained and upskilled by contractors and stuff to be senior UX. So I accepted. That was my first day. I met the other designer. We hit it off. It was really good. My expectations were really high. Like I thought I was going to be coming into this pretty much like UX lab, and it was going to be perfect. We'd have all these tools, we'd be trained. And when I came in, that wasn't what happened at all. It was completely different. There was no UX understanding at all. It was very crazy actually. And I did think a few times about quitting and finding another job. But I stuck it out and I'm still here. So the next few months, how that progressed was we had two different marketing teams. So one based in the US, one based in the UK, and they had a completely different vision, completely different goals. And I would get torn in between them. And it was really chaotic. We were part of a small team. We worked on really large projects with multiple other teams. So it was very messy. It was a lot of UI work. There was very little UX work. So it was completely different than the job description. There was lots of politics and stakeholder issues and layers. And there was lots of resistance to change. So it was very different than my previous roles, where I was working in agencies that were small, and you would deliver everything, your boss was in front of you, you'd get an okay straight away. So really different scene. And where I am now, which is 1,155 days, I worked it out from like 2 days ago. So I've worked on a huge amount of projects, completely different. So some are web app. I coded one of the websites. I worked on a design system, which was kind of like a dream job for me. And I'm possibly going to be going into another role now as well. So I've had a really big array of projects that I experienced, which was brilliant. We've one team now, which is making things much easier. We get to work with a lot of really talented contractors, and I have learned a lot from them, so that is good. We still have a lot of politics. There still are a lot of problems with that. And the reality of enterprise UX, this is my own personal view. So from one company of how they're set up, this could be completely different, and probably is completely different in other companies. So again, just take this with a pinch of salt. So the process that we have at the moment, which is a little bit confusing, it differs, and it kind of falls under the low UX maturity, but we have a different process almost for different products, and it's kind of dictated by the stakeholders. So one of our larger projects, which is like our big money project, is completely waterfall. It was designed by contractors, it was developed. There was no UX work at all done on it, as far as I'm aware. And then it was launched, and the only kind of user feedback we get is like analytics and metrics from A/B testing tools and stuff like that after it was released. So it was a big feature factory. It's all KPI, that they're the key performance indicators are the main drivers and stuff like that for it. So really old school. We also have a double diamond, which I class as a linear. This was a recent project that spun up, and it was really heavily stakeholder driven, but we do a lot of UX for show and like tick box UX. So we don't iterate on, we go through the double diamond framework, but there's no iteration afterwards. So it's done once, you tick the box, and then, just it's the same thing. The project is there, it's live, and we're only getting feedback from users. So, it's kind of halfway there. And then one of the smaller projects that we work on, or I'm working on at the moment, is it's exactly what you would expect to happen with good UX. So we have MVPs, we don't over deliver. we constantly get user involvement, and then we pivot when something happens. We can change really quickly. So that's a really good example of a project and it's very successful. So we're kind of using that as to push how, if you're user focused, you can be more successful. So this is the setup, the structure of our teams, and this is why it was so chaotic. It's different than this now, but this is kind of it's a little bit confusing, but this is what we kind of walked into when I started. So we had 2 marketing teams. The 2 marketing teams had design manager and a design director who had different views of what they wanted. One had a researcher, and then one had 2 UI designers that were kind of graphic designers, and they both used external agencies to do what they wanted. So I was based in the Ireland technology department. So I kind of get pulled between, I was either handed requirements of what they wanted, or I get pulled into, different work streams and different priorities and stuff. So it was really confusing. But because, and there was a lot of pain points that came with this, but basically the different teams had different approaches. So some of them, one of them worked really well, like proper agile. Some of them did a lot of like agile, like ceremonies and things like this that actually took up a lot of time. So they weren't actually agile. It was like a waste of time pretending to be agile. And we had a really flat structure in our area, but in other areas, it was really, really heavily layered. So it was slow to change. We were waiting on stakeholders to approve things. So not ideal. There was no collaboration or very little between the departments. So that made it really difficult, and a lot of overwork as well because of that. So I'm sure that they overdid work that they didn't need to do. So there's a lot of contractors and agencies, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what happens is that eventually they roll off, and unless you've really well documented that work, it's gone. So it's almost a waste of money. So that has happened to us. We are getting better at doing that though. So, and then obviously mixed priorities, I've kind of already talked about that. We have improved since then. So, this was just a little bit of the way it was when we came in. The pros and cons for working in an enterprise company. And these are really based on your personality, like how you deal with certain situations. So some of them could kind of go either way. But there's a variety of teams, there's a variety of work, it's flexible. So I've worked in lots of different areas, which is brilliant for me. Some people mightn't like that, but I really like that. You get support with self-development. So I got my master's paid for by work and things like that. So it is good. I met great people there. That can happen anywhere, I guess, but it was definitely a big factor for me staying. I got a lot of advice from senior contractors, lots of experience that you wouldn't get in structured roles. So because you wear a lot of hats, you have to do a lot of jobs. So UX, UI, some research, some content things, even coding. You do get to do a lot of different things, but you don't really become a master of anything, or you don't get enough time to do that. And then the negatives are like a lot of shortcuts, a lot of bad habits. So your process does suffer, and because of that, your portfolio suffers as well. You're just a number in a big company. So a lot of the people that I've seen come in that were really nice, like really good designers, when they left, nobody else kind of, they were just gone. You're just a number at the end of the day. So that's quite sad. And also there's a lot of red tape. So a lot of bureaucracy that goes on. Things that could swing either way as well. You can kind of set your own boundaries. That can be a good thing or a bad thing if you're good at that. There's less pressure because you're one of many. So if you're sick, it's not a big deal. Whereas I've been in agencies when I'm sick, I get phone calls and all that kind of stuff. Working remotely in different time zones can be fun. It can also be a bit of a headache. And then the stability and the turnover, that comes down to the low UX maturity. So that is kind of it depends on the company you go into. So who does this suit? Like, who is the enterprise persona? I don't think it's for everybody. I think I would advise people to try it if the opportunity comes up. It's quite different than what I had, but it's also a really good career job. So you can have a steady pay, nice perks, a good working life balance. Provided that you can set up your own boundaries and manage your own workload. which, you know, some people prefer structure. So it is kind of up to the individual. There's a really good opportunity to climb the ladder. So you can really quickly become, like, in a structured way, go up to being a senior, go up to be a director. You know, there is kind of no limit to that. And a lot of people I've seen have done that quite quickly. You can have experience in a really like a very focused area. So if you wanted to work just on an e-commerce site or get that kind of exposure, you know, a company that focuses on that is the way to go. And then some indicators about low maturity. So the job spec is a big one. You know, if you have a long list of requirements on a job spec, I would go onto LinkedIn. I'd look at the design team size. You know, if it's a small team, if there's only 1 or 2 designers, you know, there's a good chance that that's just a bullshit resume. If the designers haven't been there that long, or they've been there, you know, you can kind of gauge it as well. So if they've a team that's been there for 3 or 4 years, you know that it's really settled. It's probably matured a good bit. And also, like, approach people. Like, don't be afraid to message anyone on LinkedIn. Like, if you're thinking about applying somewhere, most people will probably get back to you. And they'll probably take it as a good, you know, that you are interested in a role. You're not just applying for a lot of, you know, a mass amount of jobs. Oh, and another point about that as well was, in a company where there's low maturity, you're the big fish in a small pond. But if you get into a higher maturity company, you're going to be the small fish. So some people, you know, work better in certain areas. I personally, I like both. So, and then just to recap on the main points, so don't wait for things to happen. You have to make them happen. That kind of ties in with, you know, working in a company where things don't go your way. It's not exactly what you want. You have to kind of steer things and find work that you want to do, or let people know that you're interested in certain types of work, and be really loud and bold about it. So take the good from all the situations. Like, I highlighted all the good points about, you know, the 3.5 years I worked there. I've had so many negative days and really like overworked and worked on weekends, and, you know, there's a lot of negatives that I didn't put into this. But I think in all the situations, even the projects that haven't gone well, there's been a lot of really good I can take out of them, and that I can use even going into another job. I can talk about, like, so it is about attitude. It is about, you know, seeing the good in those situations. Be smart about your next steps. So I was really bad for just coasting into my roles. So I fell into role after role, and if I knew what I know now, I would have been a bit more intelligent about the way that I picked my roles going forward, or the way that I kind of marketed myself. So that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. Even before I'm thinking about getting moving career, or doing a different type of job or different type of company, I've already started looking at CVs. I'm looking at what the requirements are to work in AOR and VR. I'm doing courses on the side, so it's not going to be a big shock. I will have stuff in my portfolio, you know, so it is just something to keep in mind. You know, stay light on your toes and get ready for your next move. And that's pretty much it. Is there any questions?
Thank you so much, Colin. Well done. Does anyone have any questions for Colin, guys?
I'll fire in there with the question. Oh, unless you have one, Valentina.
No, go on. Yeah, I was just gonna say something. Yeah.
That was just a really awesome talk, and I love the visual style. So original. Caught my attention straight away. Yeah, there was so much in there. But one thing I was wondering was, you mentioned that your org originally had about a 2 on the UX maturity scale. What would you say were some of the key things you did, or what were like the core principles or core processes you put in place that you felt helped that most?
This will sound bad, but it was actually COVID. So when COVID came in, we had a huge amount of redundancies, and that department got closed down pretty much. So we only ended up having one. So we had one chain that that people reported to, and it just made things so much easier. It's really sad to say that, because there's people there that I liked, you know, like personally. And then another thing as well was having a product a small product that it's actually the one I'm working on at the moment, that it has eyes on it. It is important to the business, but it isn't the main thing. It gives you a lot more freedom to be able to do research and to be able to do things correctly. So that is the big one as well.
Cheers.
Thanks, Colin. I think Matt has a question as well.
Hi there. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hi. I saw in one of your slides you had said you had 4 asterisks next to work-life balance, which seemed to indicate that you've had different experiences. And I was wondering essentially like what has been your experience with work-life balance in the field?
So I've struggled a lot with that. That's a good question. It comes to, the reason I had 4 asterisks beside it was it references the previous slide. It comes down to your personality. If you're someone who can set up boundaries and be quite blunt and not take things to heart, or not take work home with you, and you can set your own kind of schedule like that, I think that will help. I am better than I was at doing that. I have worked on weekends. I have taken work home. Some of the more successful projects I did in my own time, and I did them to get like a portfolio piece, and I did them to get, you know, to get some real UX work done. And I think people can take advantage of that, particularly in a big place where they just want to see results, and you are just a number, you know. So that's the reason that I put the asterisks beside it.
I see. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Matt. Anyone else has any questions for Colin? No, I just wanted to say before, actually after everyone, I think and everyone can identify with the job description fairy tale that a lot of employers are putting, and probably like in your case, Colin, probably those job descriptions are just like not updated or something. Probably they don't even understand them. So guys, just apply for jobs. Don't worry about job description. That's anyways my takeaway. And I wanted to ask one thing. You said a lot, like you mentioned your expectations and everything. Day one, and then after 40 days, and now you're still here after more than 1,000 days. So tell me, what's the thing that you really like about, like, what is keeping you there?
So like my expectations at the start, I was actually talking to the other designer that he started with me. I was his kind of mentor. I was a senior designer. When I came in the first day, the first thing I asked him was, do we have a design system? And he started laughing. So that was kind of my expectations were really high. We didn't even have like component libraries or anything like that. So the reason that I stayed was the people. I have a really good team, like a really good core team of people, and we're not even on the same team anymore. That, you know, they'd be friends outside work. You know, we really enjoy working together. That's kind of why I stayed. There's a lot of opportunity, like I said, I'm moving roles again. So when you kind of, you can get enough out of a project that once you've done the fun parts, you know, some of it goes into maintenance, and you're sustaining a project. I got stuck doing that for kind of a long time initially in the first year I was there, which was quite boring. So I kind of take the opportunity to take on new things that I'm interested in learning. So that's a big one for me.
Okay, that's amazing. Thanks, Colin. Anyone else, guys? Any questions? Okay, thank you once again, Colin. That was a great talk. I enjoyed it. I'm sure everyone else did. Next up, Pranjal. Pranjal has been with us since our second round of the mentorship program. He has more than 8 years of experience in the field, and he's currently working for Microsoft as a product designer. In his work, Pranjal loves to be proven wrong and learn from it. And in his opinion, you can apply UX principles to pretty much every aspect of your life. Pranjal, accessibility and inclusive design. Thank you.
Thanks, Valentina. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you guys can actually see it. Sure. My MacBook is actually giving up today. I don't know why. Can you see my screen? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So hi guys. My name is Pranjal, and today I'll be talking a bit about accessibility and inclusive design. Let's jump into it. So there's a little bit about me. I'm Pranjal, as I said. My pronouns are he and him. I am a designer working for Microsoft, based in Dublin, Sandyford. The photos you see, they're a bit a sneak peek of like what I do in my life and stuff. And before I go ahead, I want to thank Valentina for this opportunity as well. Thank you. So let's jump ahead. Inclusive design. So what exactly inclusive design is? So if you go really by the definitions, as per Nielsen and Norman Group, these are actually the methods to create products that understand and kind of sort of like enable people of all backgrounds and abilities to use your products. And it addresses factors like accessibility, age, geographic location, demographics, race, language, and many more. Why we should really talk about it and think. Before getting into that, I think we should first delve into what is exclusion and why it happens. So exclusion happens when we solve our problems, or solve, in our case as designers, we solve our customers' problems using our own biases. We use our own abilities and biases as a starting point, and we end up with products designed for people of, let's say, specific age, gender, language abilities, tech literacy, and physical abilities. And that's when the unconscious bias comes into play. So unconscious bias is kind of sort of like having these stereotypes that influence our minds, processing new information. And the way our brains work is it looks for patterns and events, past events, to inform decisions without sort of involving the conscious part of the mind. And this is helpful to an extent to reduce the cognitive load of our everyday, life and work and experiences. But the previous experiences that our perception is being filtered through can actually end up involving the cultural stereotypes. And what happens then is these guys gets excluded. I try to incorporate as much as I can in one slide with the visuals. Sorry if I'm missing any. But as a designer myself, I feel like every sort of decision we make can raise and lower down the barriers to participation in the society. I think as designers, it's our collective responsibility to lower down these barriers through inclusive products, experiences, services, and sort of environments as well. And designing for inclusivity not only opens up our product experiences to like a wider audience, it also reflects on how we humans really are. Like we all are growing and changing and adapting to the world around us. Like if you look back, how much has changed in the last 2 years since COVID. So I feel like as designers, we should reflect that in our designs, that diversity, and it should incorporate into our design process. So if you were to ask me, I think it's very crucial to understand the bias first, have a bit of self-reflection, understand bias both to combat our own biases as they create and tap into the biases of our customers as well, for whom we are designing, and provide them better, not just better, but like more inclusive experiences. Right. So where does the accessibility come into play? If you were to think inclusive design as a method, accessibility is an attribute to it. It's a method that enables and draws on the full range of human diversity, and it's a very important distinction that we should really keep in mind, how one is a method and the other is actually an attribute. Speaking of accessibility, according to WHO in 2018, there are nearly 1 billion people who have some form of impairment, which is nearly the 15% of world's population. So there's a huge potential there. There's a potential audience there for our products that you can, and you should reach out to them and build products for them if you call yourself problem solvers, which we are designers basically are. And one thing that really happened is, if you look here on this slide, in 1980, WHO's definition for disability was as like, they called it as a personal attribute, but today it has changed. Today they say disability as a context dependent. It's just not a health problem. It's a complex phenomena reflecting the interaction between features of a person's body and the features of the society in which he or she lives. There's still a bit of correction there that I want them to do. It's to involve our non-binary folks there as well. So it should be he or she or them as well. So I'm waiting for that and to involve gender into that too, hopefully soon. What happens is we need to understand the context of impairment. So all these physical impairments and disabilities can be permanent, temporary, and situational. I love this slide. This is a part of Microsoft's inclusive design toolkit. A really good example is, let's consider like hearing impairment, and that can be situational. For example, someone working in a bar where there's like loud music blaring, because the music is so loud, they have a situational hearing impairment. So we need to think, when we are designing products for such an audience, we need to think about that sort of situational impairment there. Someone who has an arm injury, that's a temporary impairment there. Someone who has a cataract, or someone who has a heavy accent. So all these sort of factors we should really look into when we're trying to design something that's inclusive. Next, enough of why, let's talk about how we're going to do this. So as much as I would hate to say, you have to take help of your best friends, your project managers, and the developers. As Mike said, the messiahs. We need their help. We have to. So design comes in the middle. Design is the bridging there that works with the PM to sort of work with them on inclusive design and why we should do it, because they are the product owners, and then go to devs on how we can incorporate accessibility into it. So these are some of the tools that I personally think you can start with if you're starting into accessibility and inclusive design. And these are some things I practice in my day-to-day design as well. So focus. Focus visibility is a visual indicator to help anyone who kind of sort of relies on keyboard to operate the page, by letting them visually determine the component on the screen. Why? Because it helps people who are using screen readers, people with a bit of cognitive disabilities, people who don't use mouse or something like that. So for whatever reason, focus really helps them. The second is touch. Touch targets are largely, I suppose, for people with motor delays. So the idea is, we should design it in a way to help people limit the amount of, what do you call it, spurious input, I suppose, or unintended touches, unregistered touches as well. It particularly helps people with motor delays and dexterity impairments when they're using your product. So design in a way that you can you can have all those components in your design that can be used via that are like they have bigger touch area for people dealing with motor delays. The next and very important one is the keyboard. Now, people who are blind or have a significant, I'd say, visual impairment interact with websites and apps and web apps using the screen reader software. Now, since they can't see the pointer on the screen, they use the keyboard, and that works for them really well as an alternative input to point and click interaction. So as designers, we should design content that is available for both mouse and keyboard users as well. And ideally, the focus should be going from left to right and top to bottom. One of really good example is when you go on YouTube, try using keyboard there. You'll be amazed and I'd say a bit shocked too. Sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't, depending on the screen size. How you can work here with your developers is you can give them all these shortcuts. You can give them the order of the elements in the screen of all the components. You can give them the shortcuts like use Control and Alt, arrow keys, and A, B, C, D, E. So this will really help users with mobility impairments. In conjunction with keyboard, the screen reader works comes into play. Screen readers convert all these digital text into synthesized speech. So they empower users to hear the content and navigate through the keyboard. So this particularly helps people who are blind and they can't see the product, but they want to use it. How you can contribute to that is with every element or component that if you're using a design system, you have to give your developers the name of the label, the role, let's say control type, state selected, hint. Hint is like helper text. If it's for dynamic content, you have to give them hint. Hint is like an alternative text for an image because they can't see an image. So this really helps people with learning disabilities using keyboard navigations or with cognitive disabilities as well, or people who are blind. The next is the color contrast. This is very crucial, and I often fail myself here, so I'm still learning here. But this is very important. This helps people with contrast sensitivity. Colors must be sufficient, like they must have sufficient contrast between the text color and the background, and I think it's called luminosity contrast ratio. So, and this actually includes text and images, the icons, the buttons, colors to convey information on the diagrams as well. So we should be aware of that. We should make it. There are plenty of tools online. There are plenty of plugins in Figma now that can do the job for you. I'll do it in a second for you. It'll tell you what's the contrast ratio, and then there's a lot of, no, I won't say a lot, but there's quite a few accessibility plugins there as well. So you can utilize that. You don't have to go manually and do it yourself. Another one, which is kind of related to it, is the high contrast mode, which is pretty much along the lines of the color contrast as well, but it helps people with low contrast sensitivity. If you use themes have all the three modes, the light theme, the dark theme. Actually, there's an error there. It says light theme again. I just copy pasted to the conference, sorry. And this also helps for people who work in different lighting conditions. For example, someone working in, I don't know, a photo lab where there's all red light, they probably won't be able to see or use your product in a dark theme or a light theme. So a high contrast theme would probably help them there. These are pretty much the tools for accessibility. There's another topic I really want to focus on, which is gender inclusive design. And this is something very new to me as well, and I'm still learning about it. I'm very curious about it as well, and I think there's so much scope there. There's so much to learn for us there, because gender refers to something more complex, more personal, and it's more individual, and it's far more, varied from just man and woman, basically. And if you're new to inclusive design, like myself, it can be very overwhelming to just even imagine designing a product or experiences that are fully inclusive. Like we all are learning, we all have gaps in our personal knowledge and our experience that leaves us, you know, a bit insensitive towards these kinds of exclusion that other people face on a daily basis. So that's why I feel like it's very important for us. These are some of the best practices that I try to practice in my day-to-day design as much as I can. As I said, I'm still learning about it, but I hope it helps. Prefixes. So there's a screenshot of Ace Hotel. They're based in pretty much all over Bay Area. As you can see, they have added a gender-neutral honorific for those who do not wish to be identified by gender. And United Airlines, American Airlines, they're the second one who have actually taken that up as well. So this is a great start. Maybe we should start thinking about that in our forms and input fields as well when we're trying to get someone to sign up to our app. Gender. This is a screenshot from a very famous dating app, Tinder. They started doing this, I don't know when, I think 2 years ago or something like that. But they have given options to their users to go beyond just binary identification of gender, which is man and women. They also, like, there's loads of options there. And they also give you an option if you don't want to be to let someone know your gender, because that's not important to you, to just go ahead with that. There's a no option there as well. The next one is, this was very interesting. This is from Instagram. So I didn't know that they started doing it until one day I just realized it. They started going with pronouns. They do not assume your pronoun. Of course, they know who you are, but they just don't want to presume it. And that's a very good example for a product, for a brand like Instagram. So every time you try to reply, you reply to someone on their story, it says you reply to their story. And which is very gender neutral in that sense. And it doesn't hurt anyone. It's not insensitive, I suppose, as well. And this is great for a brand like Instagram. The next is imagery. We should always use imagery, keeping in mind to cover all eventualities when it comes to your users or whatever the use case is there. This is an example from Zara. They launched their ungendered clothing. Now, I don't agree with just like going with gray and black or navy blue jumpers and sweatshirts and calling them ungendered clothing. I think there's more to that. But it's a good start for a brand like Zara, because a lot of people go they're probably the third richest people in the world, I suppose. So I think it's a great initiative for them. But I do feel like we have a responsibility here as designers to cater for all of our audiences. We also have a responsibility to educate them. And this is where I think Zara has done, at least they've started doing it. It's a great initiative. We need to also educate our clients by having all these honest decisions, particularly us as designers. We need to educate our users by setting as an example. Like if I hadn't known this, I probably wouldn't have come up with this slide. So they educated me as a designer there. The next thing is personas. This is a very tricky one. Now, when it comes to personas, for us designers, demographics are very important. But demographics can actually cause assumptions and shortcuts in our thinking and subconscious stereotypes. We should not always, but we should try as much as we can to use gender neutral names and pronouns when we go further into creating personas. And if gender is important for your persona, which is valid case, make sure you cover all personas and all eventualities. I personally urge people and myself, I try my best, and sometimes I fail, which is fine because I'm still learning, to write my personas without any reference to demographics as much as I can. Really good example of that is Refuge Restrooms. So this is an initiative by some of the trans IT folks in the Bay Area, and they came up with this service called Refuge Restrooms. What this service does is for our trans friends, they find it hard to find gender neutral bathroom. Now, I identify as a cisgender gay man, and I use a male toilet, right? As much as I want to, and I wish to, and I try to step into their shoes and see how do they feel, like I really can't. It's a very sensitive subject. And this is a great design-led, super inclusive, gender inclusive product. And it's out there and it's so helpful. And they're not just thinking about themselves, they've actually gone further. They've gone more into accessibility as well. So it's for everyone. And they call it gender neutral bathroom. I think it's a great initiative, and kudos to that, to them for that. An example of this, I actually saw this in my own FlyFit gym that I go to. They have the same thing. I didn't realize that, and I was a bit proud that they have an inclusive bathroom there. And the reason I'm showing you all these examples is like you can see that how things are changing in our physical medium, like how things are changing in our physical world and physical tangible products or services and experiences. And I feel like it's high time we should start reflecting that into our digital mediums, our intangible products or apps or softwares or like web apps and stuff like that. And lastly is try use as much as you can gender neutral roles and terms. I personally myself, like find it a bit annoying when someone asks me, sometimes people assume that, did you not bring a girlfriend? No, I think that's a bit insensitive. It's also a bit presumptuous that you think, why can't I have a boyfriend? So I think you should use partner for that. I think instead of saying husband and wife, someone can be a man and have a husband as well. So instead of using husband or wife, spouse is more sensitive. Policeman should be police officer. There's loads of lady police officers doing the exact same job as hard as they can as a policeman. Mankind, this is the one I actually kind of hate. Hate is a strong word. I think it should call humankind, I suppose. But yeah, so these are some of the best practices I try to follow in my design process and in my life as well. As I say, you can apply UX to pretty much every aspect of your life. So what exactly am I talking about? So all I'm saying is try to recognize exclusion, learn from diversity around you, and solve for one and then extend to many. By creating all these digital experiences, environments that embrace clear inclusivity, understanding and accepting, not only by that, you're not only empowering our LGBTQI folks, you're also helping all users. When you ensure inclusion for one, you actually make space for all. You transform your digital environment into a place where you can belong, where everyone is accounted for, where everyone can feel included, and it's more sensitive than it feels more human than, I suppose. So that is pretty much me. I talked enough. I don't know how much time did I take, but thank you guys. This was a great opportunity, and I hope you liked it. And again, thanks, Valentina. Any questions?
Thank you, Pranjal. Any questions, guys?
That
was
a question.
Yeah, Jordan.
Hi. Yeah, thank you. I guess my question is quite niche in a way, because of the circumstances that I've sort of grown in.
Mm-hmm.
How would you approach sort of inclusivity in a very resource restricted setting? So, for example, when I joined Buymie, there were 4 of us in an office. We had very few resources. And I very distinctly remember this one guy reached out to us on Twitter and he went on a really long rant about how bad our UX and UI was, because he was blind and he couldn't use the service. Now, we were a very small company at that time. So, and also, like, I had no idea what UI and UX was. Like, when I read the message, me and Shane, my colleague at the time, just kind of looks at each other and we're like, what's he on about? Like, we had no idea.
Right.
But we understood the difficulties. So it was like, you know, I would love to do something about this, but like, is this a priority in our roadmap in terms of like the fact that we were trying to show growth at the time? Like, you know, at this, you want to say yes, you know, this is something that I want to, you know, be inclusive about, but at the same time, there's also that other side to it where, you know, the company's position at the time makes it difficult for us to sort of prioritize that in a way. If that makes sense. How would you approach a situation like that?
I think that's a very tricky situation. I think that's why we need to bring these conversations more, and we need to make these issues come on the surface more. It's hard when it comes to stakeholders making all these decisions. But us as designers, I think it's more sort of like the ethical side of the job that we should try and bring it to the table. It's going to be a battle, I suppose. It's going to be a battle. I faced that sort of battle even in the company that I'm working for. And I asked the same question to my manager last year regarding something pretty much the same. And he said, it's good that you're bringing up this conversation. That's how it starts. So someone else is going to echo that too. So put up your point, and if it's like, try your best to do it. I think it's that sort of like a wicked problem where you don't have one answer. You don't know how to win this battle. But the fact that you have that reflection and realization, that in itself is a good start. But I think it's also, there's also a part to it, which is the mindset and culture, I suppose. I think as designers, we often check our mindset and our culture and our design processes. And the way we think sometimes doesn't reflect with the way our PMs and our engineers are thinking. And that's why I call them the messiahs. So as a part of our job, I think, as much as I hate to say this, it's also you have to UXify the way you communicate with the PMs and the stakeholders and the engineers. You have to sell them that idea too, and why you're doing this. These are the internal battles, I'm sorry, you have to face. But the fact that you have that reflection, and then it bothers you and you want to do it, that's a great start in itself. And that's where I think you'll realize if you want to continue working there in that culture, or do you want to go somewhere else and work in a culture which is more inclusive of that. Or the third option there could be, if you want to bring that culture to the team. I don't know if I gave you the right answer. I don't think there's a right answer there, but I hope I gave you some sort of answer there.
Yeah, no, that was very helpful.
For a second.
Yeah, I was just going to say this.
Yeah.
Mike was the one who actually fixed that for us. It took us 2 or 3 years. but
the thing that I want to say is, the problem is when we don't have the knowledge, like when there is the expertise missing, like everything you don't know is very hard. But and I didn't know, it was the first time I was working with native apps. I didn't know anything. And but in the end, it took some work from me, but development time. Yeah, it was less than 5 hours work, which is like nothing, in order to fix the main issues that we have. It didn't fix 100% of the app, but it allowed blind people with 5 hours of work to make an order, knowing what time the order will reach them, and choose the products they want. So this is like, it's so minimal, but everything you don't know is impossible. So once you know a little bit, and when you started, like I think if you from the beginning that you build something, if you had the knowledge, it wouldn't be 5 hours because it wouldn't even be counted. It would be 0.
Yeah.
It would be just coming with the delivery. But yeah.
And I think that's where all these tools come into play. When you give them the designs, when you hand over them the designs, you give them all these spec, and they can and it'll become part of the process then. Design to PM handover, no, design to engineers or design to dev handover. And you give them all these specs. So you already tell them what you need to do. And I think probably that'll really help then. I think Jane has a question.
Hi, yeah, thanks, Pranjal. Thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm just wondering, kind of in an initial early testing phase of a project, how do you kind of make sure to include everyone and everyone's needs at that early stage, but also when they are being included, how does your approach change? Because obviously you have to ask questions and pick up on their specific needs that you might not have to ask someone, let's say, without a disability versus someone with a disability.
So to answer your first question, I use a lot of tools, and we have a dedicated team as well. But if you don't, I use Figma plugins. They keep getting better, and you can utilize that. So just start with the keyboard navigation, and then the screen, because screen reader and keyboard navigation, they're like they work hand in hand. So if you start out the keyboard navigation, screen reader is going to work. You probably have to work with translators there as well to translate into different language, but that's like further down the line. Start with keyboard, go with the screen reader, and use if you have a content designer, take their help to translate the strings into as simple language as they can. Even if it's in English, make it as simple as you can. And when the screen reader comes into play, give them the hint what this option is about. It's almost like alt text for image. So people who can't see, we give them a bit of hint what this is about. And then once you do that, go further into the contrast mode, because that goes for people who have a bit of color visibility issues. And make sure like the contrast ratio, it's very easy. I think it's only like 3. It depends on the font size. So I think usually for AA, I think it's 3.5. For A, it's 2.5. Jamie, do you remember?
I only know for AA because I'm always trying. Like it's almost automatic now. I'm checking it so automatically. I don't even think of it from an accessibility point of view. It's like, is it AA? Are we safe? Because I don't want to have to revisit it at a later stage. But I don't like. I'm so used to just using those contrast checkers and the plugins like that. I don't even. It's not even like an extra stage, right? It's just baked in.
That's where I don't remember those ratios or numbers, because I use the tools. I use the Figma plugins. I'd say, Jane, start with the Figma plugins. They're really good these days. They save a lot of time for the accessibility folks if you have a team there who do the testing for you. So before even you ship the designs to your devs, it's all bulletproof then.
That's great. Thank you so much.
No, what was the second question?
The second question was basically, when you're testing, how does your approach change then for individuals who have disabilities?
That's very tricky. That you really need to invest in that. You need to get the accessibility features test with the folks who are going to be using the accessibility features, and see if it's working for them or not. Give them user tasks, give them end-to-end journeys or flows, and see if they're able to make it through. And then ask them, is there something is there any stage they were confused at? I usually record the screen and then look into it, how the keyboard goes, the navigation there. And that really helps me. And then I ask them questions straight up. And in my personal experience, I don't have much experience in the testing side of things because they have a separate team for that. But it usually takes 2 to 3 accessibility users to do the testing for you, and the patterns are going to repeat. It's very simple and easy. It's really hard for folks like us who go really deep into the visual side of things, and they get confused with the whole, like the color and like bombardment of all the information. But for accessibility folks, in my opinion, it's actually very easy. If they can make it from one end to the other end, with dedicated jobs to be done and user journeys, you're good to go. It's actually not that tough.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's perfect.
Anyone else has any questions for Pranjal?
I have one more if no one else does.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Fun.
So, thanks. I have a question about accessibility with regards to class. With regards to class, like social class. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything you read or seen with regards to that. Because when I try to find anything on that, I don't really.
What do you mean by virtual glass?
Social class.
I'm not really getting around question.
So like middle class, working class.
Oh, you mean,
class.
oh, right, okay.
Right.
How does that impact? Sorry, again.
Again, maybe it's quite niche in a way. So a lot of the time, because I come from a very working class background, a lot of the conversations that I have, or when I try to introduce, things like, oh, there's this service that can help you set up a business, or if you want to upskill, it kind of, there's a disconnect in a way, because they don't have maybe a background or an understanding. Or when I send them, like, for example, oh, here's LinkedIn. Yeah, it's like.
I think that's where the biases come into play.
Yeah,
that's where the biases come into play. And I did an exercise when I was in college, and my professor, I was doing my master's, and he was doing some research for women suffering from breast cancer. And a company got in touch with him and asked him to do the research to design their personal wears, like innerwears or underwears and pants and stuff for that. And in order, because they already had a product, but it wasn't working. It wasn't the market sales weren't as much as they were hoping. The reason was they weren't even tapping into the world of all these amazing superwomen who are fighting with cancer. What he did there is he made them, and even us, we were there in the class for a day, to wear their product, which was a padded bra for all these women who went through the surgeries and they're going to chemotherapy and all. And it's a very emotional and sensitive issue for women. He made them wear that product for 3 hours in the class. And we wore that as well. Well, we wore it for half the day because he wanted us to have some insights in it. And they completely understood it then. Even there were like some female managers there as well. They were very emotional after that. So I think it's because they had the biases. I can understand from men because they have their own other mentality. But even the women there who were visiting us, they had their own biases too. And at the end of the day, they understood it. So when it comes to situations like that, in order for you to convince them, you have to break their biases and you have to make them go through the experience. Make them sit on a wheelchair and make them like, here's the wheelchair. I'd like ask you to like go around your daily activities on this wheelchair and see how you progress. That's when their biases will break because they haven't experienced that. Everyone has their own bubble, I'd say, as I say. So you need to make them tap outside their bubble. So they break their stereotypes and biases. I do that with my parents all the time. They're Asian, so they're full of stereotypes. So like it's in our blood. So I hope that kind of answers your question. You have to make them step into their shoes, the people you're designing for, and then make them understand. I started doing that with my PMs now. So I got assigned this new product and they think it's super class. And I said, no, it's not. So I made them use the product to assign me work. And it took them just one day to realize it. So I just go through like these sort of practices and ways to convince people. So I hope I am able to help you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Jamie, did you want to say something? Thanks, Brian. Thanks,
Oh,
Jordan.
I was thinking about adding to that point, right? So I don't know if it's super helpful, but if you want to see an example of how class is exploited, if you go on to any for-profit university page, or you look at financial services where they're like loan sharks, or they're trying to give you quick loans, you will see all sorts of patterns and manipulations to try to catch people in situations where they're desperate. A lot of misleading tactics. But one thing I think is really important if you want to design for, I suppose, class inclusivity is, you know, have honest representation, like do some research into different markets, actually talk to people, and don't do representation from a point of a marketing spin. You know, people pick up if it's dishonest. So whatever it is you're working on, or whatever it is you're working towards, I don't know if it's a design or a marketing project, just actually talk to people and get the real story, and don't kind of, as Pranjal said, don't go to your base assumptions and biases, because we all have them. We're all biased, no matter how virtuous or perfect or diverse we think we are. So yeah, that's my 2 cents in that.
I agree with Jamie. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Pranj. Yeah, I actually had the same question like Jordan had at the beginning, because a lot of times, like you work in Microsoft, and accessibility is one of your kind of #1 priorities. But in other companies that are smaller, a lot of times there's no budget or scope for accessibility. And this reminds us once again that a job of a designer is not only to design, but also to advocate and to sell yourself. I mean, not sell yourself, but like sell whatever you're talking about and what you want.
This happens in Microsoft too. Like they they have their own biases too. Like, and I always use this example, especially for PMs, and well, I don't really listen to engineers. Sorry if there's any engineer. Like I always give them this example. Like if you are going to solve or design or create a product for a normal housewife, a middle-class housewife, but you're going there and talking to Lisa Vanderpump from Real Housewife of Beverly Hills, no, it's gonna fail. Talk to the right people. Don't talk to the super user. Talk to the user at that. Don't go from top to bottom approach. Go from bottom to top. If your app can be used by a 50-year-old, I'm telling you, anyone can use your app. I always use my mother as the benchmark. If she can use that, anyone can use the app.
That's a very good example. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Pranj, once again. That was great. Very, very, very insightful. Anyone else has any questions for Pranj, guys? No? Okay, so we'll continue to Rob. Rob is also one of our mentors. He's been with us since our 2nd round. Rob has more than 6 years of experience in UX. He's currently working for the digital product design agency Human, and he's the UX manager at Chupi, an Irish luxury jewelry company. He has always loved solving problems, and he finds very satisfying to take a complex product and simplify to make user lives a little easier. Rob, I leave it to you now. The portfolio is a project.
Thanks for the intro. Let's share my screen, so hopefully everyone can see that. Yes. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so this is a talk about portfolios and how we can kind of approach them with the same design thinking that we would any other projects. So a little bit about me. I've been researching, designing, and building digital products for 5 years, worked as product designer human, and I'm the UX manager at Chupi, which, as Valentina said, is an Irish luxury jewelry company. I want to sort of disclaim that I'm not a hiring manager. This is a talk written from the perspective of a product designer, just about how I approach portfolios, how I think others should approach portfolios. So I'm not coming at this with a wealth of experience in sort of hiring. So this talk is, as I said, an approach to thinking about portfolios in a user-centric way, but it's not a one-size-fits-all approach to portfolios or writing case studies, and it's not a guide on portfolio presentations or interviews, portfolio presentations and interviews. So product jobs are kind of unique because we have our portfolio, which lets us show previous work along with kind of a CV, which is something that is somewhat unique to the field. And when I say product jobs, I'm keeping it purposely vague. It could be research, design, engineering, anything like that. But the primary job of the portfolio is to get you interviews, is to get you in the door. So a portfolio allows you as a candidate to give a better background on your process and decision making, and to shape your display of past work. And it allows the hiring company to get a richer picture of you as a candidate, to get a better idea than they would from just a CV. So our training in UX is all about understanding our users and what they need. So there are a load of different approaches to projects like design thinking or double diamonds. And they all share this kind of goal of defining the audience and their pains and solving those pains through design. And when we're building a portfolio, we write up these projects and we explain our approach as best we can. So we have a project here on the right, kind of you would write through like the empathy stage, definition stage, ideate, prototype, test, ship, that sort of thing. You would cover all of that in your case study. And we write up our case studies and throw them up in our portfolio, you know, a bio and some contact information. And what can happen is that the portfolio starts to act just as a means to an end. So it's something that only exists to host case studies. It's this kind of shell around projects. And what I'm suggesting is that we should approach the design of a portfolio with the same user-centric model as the projects within it. So ultimately, a portfolio is a product. It is no different than the projects that we write up within it. It has users who have problems, pains, and goals that you can solve with good design. And it has a stakeholder who have goals and targets, which is you. And it's rare that you get to play the stakeholder. So I'm going to introduce a framework for writing up case studies that I like, but it isn't the best way to approach projects or write case studies. It's just one way of doing it that I would sort of see similar to writing up through design thinking or double diamond or anything. It's just one approach. So it's from the Solving Product Design Exercises book by Artyom Tatinsky, which is quite good. And I just think it's a really clean kind of approach that we can use as an example. So to break it down, the approach is, why are we doing this? Why is it important? You know, who's it for? Who's the user? Who needs this? Where is it used? What's the context? What is it? What is actually in it? What does it do? And how do we measure success in its solving goals? So let's consider a portfolio as a project through this approach. So if we think about why we have portfolios, I kind of touched on this at the start. Portfolios have benefits for the applicant and the hiring company. So a company has business needs that are driving the decision to hire, right? They are either someone has left, they're growing their team, they have targets that they want to hit that they need someone like you to do. And a portfolio lets the company see that you have a kind of a process and can repeat it to solve problems. So a high standard of execution of process is really important, right? That we want, if you're a UI designer, really crisp UI. If you're UX, it might be really meticulous wireframing. Whatever your form of execution, it should be high. But what a company will also be concerned about is that you can repeat that high standard in different contexts by proper problem solving. And that's what a portfolio lets you show, and lets a company kind of glean that, like, okay, you get this, and this will work multiple times. If we consider the users of a portfolio, this is going to depend based on what you're applying to, but I've, as an example, taken recruiters and hiring managers as two kind of user groups. So not every business will have both, or even an individual dedicated to a role. It might have one person who is acting first as a recruiter and then as a hiring manager. But those are our two kind of core groups. And as I said, your users might be different and depend on the role you're applying for. You should consider that when you're sort of approaching the portfolio. So if we think about recruiters, you know, at a high level, their primary goal is to create a good pool of candidates that might fill the role, that they can be interviewed and stuff. And there are a lot of applicants for the recruiter to filter through, right? So they will look at a lot of portfolios. And if we think about hiring managers, this could be a member of the team that you're trying to join, or it could be someone in a bigger company who is just dedicated to hiring. And their primary goal is to find an effective candidate who will help the team fulfill the business goals and kind of fit in with the team and work well with them. And if we think about when a portfolio is used and the context, it'll be assessed with a CV at the first kind of screening. That first pass is likely to be quite quick. You might have 20, 30 seconds to make a first impression, so clear calls to action are really important. If we think about the context of the user using the portfolio, this will happen during the working day, likely on desktop monitors. In the product world, desktop monitors are giant and wide, so make sure to set like a max width on your content. That's something that I just see a lot of people trip up on. And I think as a candidate gets further through the hiring process, hiring managers and team members will have more space and time to kind of go deeper into case studies and really understand the decision making and strategy used. So it's kind of about progressive disclosure, right? That you want immediate kind of to get through that recruiter really fast thing, but you also need enough content there to actually support the later stage where someone is really trying to understand how you approach problem solving. And when we talk about what a portfolio should be, that depends. It depends entirely on the job that you're applying for. What you need to do is to think of your core users and what are their goals and their frustrations, and how can you solve their problems better than other portfolios using your kind of user-centric approach. So consider how you get across your process, your decision-making, your execution. Content, how you write it is as important as the visual design. When like, are you writing content in a way that works for your core user groups? Or is it way too long that like a recruiter is never going to read 2,000 words? So is it a case that, you know, you have like a TLDR at the top or something like that? So yeah, there isn't a one size fits all, but it's just to consider what your users need. And then how do we measure the successful portfolio? So this depends on your initial goal, right? It could be to get interviews, or it could be recruiters getting in touch. If you're already established in the field, it could just be a case of building a network, getting people to add you on LinkedIn, social, that sort of thing. But I'd encourage you to think smaller as well. So when users land on your site, what do you want them to do? Set up tagging with something like Google Analytics, which you can do with a really like low to no code approach a lot of the time. And measure kind of softer conversions. So maybe how many people started a case study versus how many people finished case studies, bounce rates on pages, exit rates on pages, that sort of thing, just to really start to optimize towards your users. So this is just one UX approach to a portfolio, but ultimately my core point is that we're taught to apply process in order to deliver a user-centric design that will actually solve user issues and fulfill stakeholder goals. And what I'm suggesting is that you go up a level and that you apply these principles to how you display your work in your portfolio, so that you can fulfill your own goals as a stakeholder by allowing the hiring company, who are the user in this case, to fulfill their goals. both large in terms of hiring the right candidate and small in terms of just navigating, getting around, that sort of thing. And then just some extra tips from seeing portfolios. Be sure to include a why this matters intro in case studies and consider the business context, even if you have kind of made it up. So for example, if you're redesigning the onboarding for a taxi app, just start with like a why this matters to a taxi app, that like, here's the competition, the onboarding, ultimately someone standing outside a pub at 3 a.m. who's just making an account, it needs to be very quick. They have a lot of competition. Here's why this design matters. I think that's a really strong move that a lot of people don't put in case studies. And at the end, be sure to include a how do I measure success. So again, even if you don't have access to numbers and you're kind of pulling them from the air a little bit, it can be something like, using the same example of an onboarding taxi app. It's like, well, what will be the key metrics there? Is it conversion rate of onboarding? Is it user drop off in the process? How would you measure it? Just both of those things, I think, show that you understand the broader business context that's going on above you that you can actually design for. And I'd also suggest to just go a step further. Use the UX superpower of empathy when you are just writing an email or communicating with PMs or devs. Just really don't let your training be lost on the broader aspects of UX. And I think it's once you start to really apply that, I'm not suggesting doing an entire design thinking process per email, but just to really start to think about the users, what they want, how they perceive information. I think once you start using it in other aspects of work, it can be a really powerful tool. So that's it. Very short talk, but I hope it is useful, and I'm happy to take any questions or anything like that.
That was very good, Rob. Thank you so much. Very interesting point of view. Does anyone guys have any questions for Rob? Probably all faced similar problems with your portfolios.
I wish I'd
Matt?
gotten told a lot of this, right? I have no questions, but just I wish I'd been told this so long ago. I struggled so much with portfolios. I was obsessed with, I need to have a visual style. I need them to see that I have a certain edge. And really all I needed to do is just show my work, right?
Yeah, so I mean, every designer's process is rebuilding their portfolio, and then in 6 months just being like, what on earth was I doing? And but I think it's just when you rebuild it to really kind of think of like, who am I trying to please here? If you're going for a giant company, those are different users compared to a smaller agency, or even if it's one thing, it might be a digital company that is going to have a lot of literacy around UX and stuff, or it could be another company who's hiring their first UX person who won't have the same level of understanding. So I think tailoring the work towards whatever you're going for is a sort of a powerful move, I think. I think Matt has a question.
Yeah.
Hi there. I was wondering how long is too long, right? Because I have I'm a student at TU Dublin doing a level 9 course in UX, and we've had a couple of projects that have really become quite extensive, right? And so I start imagining, well, I could get rid of this, I could get rid of this, and then I talked to somebody who worked somewhere, and she was asking me, oh, do you have, make sure you include user flows and journey maps. And in my mind, the user flow was like, maybe if I'm cutting some things, I'll just cut the user flow. And now this person's telling me, oh, make sure you include a user flow. So it seems unreal for me to expect anyone to read the case study as I put it up. Unless people are a lot more generous than I'm imagining them to be, because my case studies are quite long and I have no idea how to cut them down. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Matt. I think it's it's tricky, right? It is. I've been in cases where I've had entire a thesis to put up there. I think it's all about structure at that point, right? That you don't. It's not necessarily about cutting it to one specific size. It's more about, okay, here's my content, and now how do I design an experience for someone who has 2 minutes to scan through this, which is probably going to be visual heavy. How do I design it for someone who has 10 minutes to read it and really wants to go deep on it, make sure that I've done my empathy maps or whatever. I think like really good headings is critical. I think sometimes you get this wall of text and it's just broken up with images. I think table of contents makes a big difference as well, to let the reader know exactly where they are. If you can do it dynamically, great, but even if you can't, just to have it be like number the headings or something, just to let them know where they're at. I think summaries are very important as well. You know, if you start to get into a really, really long case study, to have a kind of an abstract at the top, that really describes kind of a sentence for like your research, your methodology, your design, what happened, what was the outcome, you know. I think it's not about, I wouldn't see it as cutting or making it longer. I'd see it more about structuring. So like, okay, here's all my content. How am I going to lay this out in terms of headings, visuals, all that sort of stuff to make it work for, as I said, someone who has 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Because obviously, you know, in a course, a lecturer wants to see that you've done everything, right? But someone who is looking at 15 portfolios out of like emails is going to just be scanning through it. So you have to kind of structure it for both, which is really challenging. And I would suggest that if you can get something like Google Analytics onto your site, what you can start to do is look at the bounce rate on longer projects. So you can see people who just come in and go, oh, and they just close tab and they don't read it. And what you can start to do then is kind of go, okay, it might be a bit long, so maybe I'll try and structure it this way, and start to see if that affects your bounce rates and your time on page. So I think having that level of feedback is also very important. So sorry, it's a rambling answer, but I think to summarize it, it's structuring the content for different users, and then also allowing yourself to get feedback on how users are actually behaving on that page through Google Analytics or something like that.
Oh, that wasn't rambling at all. That was really helpful, because I've already gone, I think, through like 3 iterations of working on my portfolio, and this last one, I don't know why I didn't do it before. I finally decided to sort of design it in XD before I brought it all together, and that's really helped a lot. So and I think I agree with you on the structure, because I think that's what it helped with the most, with the structure. So we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Best of luck.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Rob. Does anyone else have any questions for Rob? Guys, don't be shy. Okay. Jordan has to drop off. Bye, Jordan. Okay, thank you so much, Rob. That was great. So for the end, we have Jamie. Jamie is also one of our mentors, and he's been voted for the best mentor in the 2nd round of the mentorship program. Well done, Jamie. He's currently working as a UX lead at SimLocal on the platform for eSIM vendors. The thing he loves about UX is discovering the impact of simple, informed changes and how they affect users. In Jamie's words, this is not always easy, but it's always rewarding. Jamie, I'll let you talk, working in a team of 1.
Thanks, Valentina.
Thank you.
You're buying us all the points, Jamie.
You can see that okay, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah.
Super. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Valentina, for giving me a chance to talk. And thank you, all of you, for sticking around. I know it's getting later in the evening, so I really appreciate that. So my talk is set up to be a bit like a field guide for anyone who's ever found themselves entering as the sole designer in an org or the first designer in the company. So I've got a lot of little factoids and snippets. If anything catches your attention, do reach out to me after this talk or ask me a question at the end. So how did I end up in design? Well, I didn't have a name for it initially. Everything about my work and everything I've been interested in has always been around creating a better experience for others. I wanted to share my knowledge. So initially I studied to be a teacher, just seemed to be the right thing to do. And then I dropped out in panic because I was scared about being a teacher for the rest of my life. I also wanted to make things. So I figured, okay, maybe I'll go into industrial design. And that really excited me. I had a great time in my course. I was able to discover frustrating user problems and solve them through physical interventions. And I love discovering the problem landscape and talk to people who'd be interacting with anything I designed. I didn't find the engineering side of things as interesting. For me, it was as much about the journey as it was the destination. So while I was studying design, I also had a stint in coffee, which became a big part of my life. Initially, it was just a way for me to pay off my student loan, and it became one of my loves. And what I really loved about coffee specifically was actually the hospitality space. Without even realizing it, I was getting deep into designing services and managing customer expectations. And I didn't even think of this as sort of a professional space that I could be in. But coffee wasn't going to pay the bills. So post-college, I did a bit of freelancing, and then I discovered, product and UX design and service design, and it's 101 different acronyms. And yeah, everything started fitting from there. I knew I'd found something that I really engage with. So my talk's about the team of one, which is sort of in contrast to Colin's enterprise talk. It can feel a bit like wading into open waters. Suddenly there's nobody that you can turn to that understands your language as a designer. There might be a few sharks about or turmoil. There's no safe landing for the eye to see. But it offers a really special kind of freedom that you can't experience if you're on a cushy cruise ship, otherwise known as like an embedded design team. You get to chart your voyage, you get to define your goals, you get to really chart design decisions that shape the products and services for the better. So it's a lot of power and a lot of responsibility. So if you did get that job, congratulations. A new design role for me is a bit like a first day at school. It can be very exciting, and you want to jump into everything at once. And of course, you've got a lot of idealistic notions about what your job's going to be, which you'll soon have crushed, but that's okay. And you're going to feel an obligation if you're new to design to jump straight into an assignment. You're potentially also the first in-house designer in the organization. So don't forget that somebody thought you were worth assigning a new department for and hiring. So it's really important to remind yourself of that after the initial excitement runs dry. And that's something you should remind yourself of every day, actually, even long after you start your job. So something that can happen is, especially for new starters, there's a sense of, like Mike said, I am the Messiah here to fix all your problems, and I speak for the users. I am the user's voice. But for an organization, there's nothing more off-putting than descending from the design heavens and treating the org like a poorly patient that needs to be fixed. So my big recommendation when you start a new job in a team of one is to keep it cute, keep it mute, and learn everything about the internal environment of your organization. It's really important to listen and show openness to everyone around you. You really want to sow your seeds of future influence and accumulate those brownie points. So I would say at the start, cut with the grain, not against. Do a lot of listening. Don't show resistance to your initial tool set or the initial processes and ideas. You don't know where they've come from. It's important not to make a lot of assumptions. You need to gain credibility as well for the big moves that you make later on. I would say it's very important to document your role clearly from the start. Take lots of notes about yourself, your own skills, your own weaknesses. Take notes about other departments. What's the org structure? And don't assume that others know what you do. And likewise, which is a more important point that we forget, don't assume you know what everyone else does. Actually talk to people and write down these things and make yourself known to every team. Send hello messages, make sure you schedule one-on-one calls. It's a bit harder to do now remotely, but it is important to reach out to a key figure from every department. And that's how you leave a lasting impact. And that's how you start to build your credibility. And you really want to document absolutely everything. So document your feelings, document your project work, every exercise you do. At the end of every week, make a mark of how well did you do that week? Did you miss anything? Is there anything you'd like to do? Is there anything you could have reacted better to? You'd be surprised just how quickly you forget everything when you're in the moment, even a few weeks into a new job. It's important that you make friends with all the non-designers, everyone in the organization from the bottom to the top. You really want to start to find your friends and your allies, and you want to find points of commonality between different members of different teams. So just to give an example, maybe there's a data scientist in your team and you might think, well, I have nothing in common with a data scientist, but they might need help with designing a dashboard. And in exchange, you might need help making sense of data that they're producing. It's really important, as a higher maturity designer, to be amongst different groups of people in different disciplines. It's really important to open your mind up and understand every facet of an organization. So yeah, find your friends and allies, and your allies, are a particular type of group in an organization. They're going to be your supporters. You'll need them in times of stress, and you'll need them when you need to make big calls. So having a support network in any job, I think is one of the biggest assets any employee can have. Do also consider external mentorship. There may not be a traditional track of design leadership or seniority. It is very valuable to have someone to bounce back ideas or navigate through issues. Unfortunately, it's almost a certainty that you're going to have detractors or energy vampires, people who don't share your vision or your spark, or people who see you as a task doer. So they're going to give you all the, oh, can you do my clip art for my document, or can you do the logo for the email? How you handle that will define your role and how other people see you. You're also going to have coworkers who like playing designer, often at your expense, unfortunately. In my opinion, I used to think, it was important that everyone got in on design. But then, someone made a really good point to me about being a professional designer. Non-accountants don't tell accountants how to run their books. So in that sense, don't let people tell you how to design. I do think it's important to foster design collaboration and facilitate it, but you've got to still be the owner of your work and the person who's the last say. Maybe when you started getting interested in design, you imagined yourself, spending your hours doing wonderful design work, and everyone would be like, oh, your designs are so beautiful. We're so glad to have you here. And, you spend all your time creating user flows and flawless usability tests and your fabulous design libraries. But the fact is, good design work and execution is really all about relationship management. And I would say managing your relationships and navigating those battles is as important, if not more important, than the task work itself. You're not an island as a designer, and you need those people around you. They are contributing to the business too. With remote and hybrid work as well, I find it can be extra hard to manage relationships and get a feel for the atmosphere amongst colleagues. So try to read the room in a situation, but check yourself as well and how you react to other people. Your feelings are going to be on high at times, and things are going to get tense. And particularly, I find with text chats and the likes of Slack and Teams, they can be the seeds of bad feelings. Not everyone has great communication skills, including possibly yourself. So try to understand everyone's viewpoint. A developer that you're talking to and having a clash with, they might seem to be acting difficult, and you might think, why are they so against me? But it might have nothing to do with you at all. It's important to see their perspective. They might be overloaded with work, and they might be having a stupid issue with their team, or they may be having a bad time personally. I do think as well, when you're managing relationships, when you get more comfortable with your teams, there's a phrase a great UX professional, Debbie Levitt, uses called no soft cloud landings. So when it's needed, give your point firmly, don't shirk around it. Make it clear, that if your time isn't being valued in a situation, don't be afraid to decline a meeting or ask a team if they can move on from a point that isn't adding value. But if things start to go awry, just take a breath, take your hands off the keyboard, go for a walk and talk to your allies. And if you have that mentor, talk to them too, because they can really help. Understand the language of each department. So different departments can speak very differently to one another. And it's not uncommon for there to be information silos and people having different ideas of what other people are doing on the same project. But if lines get crossed, use the rules of engagement. Just take it easy. Don't go straight to nuclear. See if you can resolve it internally. Try to get the big picture is what I'm saying, and try to understand other people, and just try to be a good communicator. And empathy goes a long way, right? Another thing is, it's likely that you're going to be your own boss as a team of one. You're probably reporting to someone, but they're probably not a designer. So you'll need to define a lot of your own time outside of task work. You're likely going to be in charge of your own schedule, which can be a blessing, but it's also a curse. So be reasonably strict in your own time planning. It's to protect yourself from overwork, as well as making sure you don't slump through a week without any goals. It's totally okay to have some off days. That's a universal experience, but I do feel that structuring your time helps in the long run. Figure out where you're adding value in the company and figure out where you're being valued in weekly meetings. If you don't feel like your presence is giving value and you're not learning anything, you don't have to always be at every meeting. It's a thing you learn as you get experience. Even if you're not asked to, I do find keeping a little personal report of how your week / month / quarter went and tracking your future objectives, that can really help you track your growth and progress, both in just the company and your career. And sometimes it's really nice to look back. I keep this little folder on my desktop. It's a little geeky, but it's a folder filled with messages of, when people thanked me or when people were really happy with something I did. And if I need that little boost, a reminder that I've done a good job so far, I usually go into that and just flick through some of those quotes and images. Do whatever works for you. So if you're a productivity goddess and you probably have nothing to worry about here, but for the rest of us, it is really hard to find a system that matches our own mental model and one we can stick with. Whatever way you manage your thoughts and outputs, here's a few kind of pointers or core principles that I have. Keep it consistent, whatever system you use. Try to keep it unbiased. So if you're feeling a certain way, don't bring your personal feelings into it because you probably will cool down. Make it easy to refer to in some manner. So if you're using a paper notebook, maybe use tabbed sections. Use keywords, mark dates for everything. Link it to project titles or code names, or names of people you're working with. And if you can as well, at least for the public-facing documentation, make it shareable. It's really good for keeping transparency. And just the other day, I got a message from someone I never worked with who said, "Oh, I was looking at your documentation. It's so interesting, taking a peek into what you do." That really helps with getting leverage and being able to validate and to articulate your design decisions. So I like to use Confluence for my design findings as well as documentation. The main reason is because I know the organization will see it. It's a tool that we all use. I find it's really good for keeping everything together. I also use SharePoint and PowerPoint for corporate facing work. I'm not a fan of SharePoint, and particularly how some companies may use it. I think things get lost, but I'm going with what people know and I'm going with what people work with. A thing that I see with junior designers that kills me is, when they share a Figma link to a portfolio or they share a link to a cool service that they found. The problem is you're going to distract people from seeing what you want them to see, because they're just trying to figure out how to use the tool you sent, and they probably have an invite link and they're thinking, oh, this is such a frustrating, annoying thing. So I would say, on a side note, like, know your audience for anything you end up sharing design-wise, and try to advocate in an org, because while there's lots of nice tech in our space, people just want solutions and they want things to work. So on the subject of housekeeping from a design perspective, you're probably going to be in one of two different situations. You're probably going to be inheriting existing designs, or you may have to start from scratch. There may not be any formalized design presence. So what I would say is, first, just try to get everything into one place. It might be a bit scattered, and figure out what design standards the team are used to, what design stack you have access to in the company. It could be the case that there are no strong expectations of what you use and people are open. That might give you the flexibility to just suggest tools that you're most comfortable with. If you've received like a mess, if you've received, just this crazy slew of files and it's taking you more time to figure out than it is to actually do your work, you should consider rebuilding things or possibly using another tool. So once I got this crazy set of Adobe XD files and everything looked like it had been designed on a website builder, and then they copied and pasted all the SVG stuff into XD. So it was just really bizarre, like nothing fit, nothing worked. There was no components or linkages. So I knew I'd be using those designs a whole lot going forward. So I made the decision to rebuild everything. It took a lot of time, but now I save so much time because I'm working with something that's scalable. If you are starting from scratch, don't try to be the hero that builds everything from scratch. So you do not need to make like a bespoke icon set, and you don't need to build a design system. Like, there's a lot of people talking about, oh, I made a design system. But if you're starting off and you're a team of one, you don't have time to make a design system. There are hundreds of people who've come before you and they've created fantastic, comprehensive asset packs and UI kits. They shared those so people like you don't have to do that work and you can get a head start. One other thing I would say in terms of housekeeping your design files, one thing that I used to do a lot, and I really regret it now, is I'd work on a few designs and then I'd overwrite those with new designs, and then I'd keep editing and overwriting. And then I realized I couldn't go back to those older designs. I didn't document them because I was so into what I was doing. So I would say duplicate instead of deleting as a general rule of thumb. Save everything as you do as you go along. It really helps you to build a story and show what you went through. So I use Figma for designs. I really like using the pages function in a design file. And I usually date those designs, make a few notes of change logs. And it's just changed everything. I can actually show stakeholders a story of how I got to something, and it doesn't look like I made it up. So let's fast forward, right? You've just gotten settled, you've gotten your first project work done, and you're working quietly, hopefully, and building your influence block by block. So now it's time to strategize and make some power moves and really start to grow your presence. You may be the only one who can do this because you might be the only person who's having the bigger picture in your company and talking to every department. So don't wait for your permission to strike. You'll know when you're ready to do this. But if you wait for permission, it's never going to happen. If you don't stand for something in your work, you're going to run the risk of being an SX designer, which is a stakeholder experience designer. And there's a lot of those around. At some point, you've got to strive to carry your design to a better place in the organization. You're the designer, that's your job, and it's not always going to be easy. You've got to advocate design right when you're dealing with management and product. So it's all about setting down strategies, setting out budgets, talk about UX as a tool, for returning on investment, for saving time for everyone. It's nice when you say, I'm the voice of the user, or, oh, what about the user? But I guarantee you nobody in management wants fuzzy feelings. They want money. So promote your processes when you've developed them. Depending on how mature your company is, there may be no formalized research in place, for example. it is the case, usually that research is when a few members of the team and at their coffee break, they're testing out products and they're forming kind of guesses and going, sure, I can use it, that's fine. It's important to just slowly push for the right thing. Aim for the easy wins. And evidence is always harder to fight with than, I really think it should be X. You'll need evidence to be able to take the bigger design wins and gain influence in your org. I would also say avoid the design thinking parade from the perspective of everyone can design. You are the professional and your team can contribute to the process. But if you don't make yourself known as the person who has the expertise and the influence, you'll end up being steamrolled and people will just see you as an order taker and not the expert. When things are feeling like a struggle, as I said, keep a journal, keep notes, marking every time you achieve something, anytime you've had a challenge or some feedback. Use this as a system to improve yourself and make a better case. And if you are just struggling in general with getting design influence, change your perspective. Pretend you're a design agency that's coming in. Pretend you're not just the one designer. That can reframe a lot of your frustrations into opportunities and can give you a bit of confidence. So, naturally, when you've hit a year into the job, you're taking a look back at what you've done. You're still maybe a team of one. You're looking at all your friends with their big teams and awesome perks, and the FOMO can really set in. The next big job is always tempting, and it's always tempting to me, but it may not be time. So before you jump, consider your position and the pros and cons of being in a team of one. Consider your growth opportunities. So what can you still try here? Have you seen all the projects through to the finish that you're involved with? And can you still take them somewhere new afterwards? Maybe there's more strategy work to build. Maybe there's a research repository waiting to be built. This is your sandbox space, and you may not always get a safe space like this to continue refining your skill set without the pressure of performance in a larger team. But be realistic about your career needs. If you're hitting a wall, why is that? Can your job facilitate training to help you grow? Are you stopping yourself from raising the bar? Maybe nobody's challenging you. It might be up to yourself to rise to that challenge. One thing I'd say is watch out for premature promotion offers. You're still growing as a designer, especially if you're new. And if your job doesn't understand your career track, being the chief design officer with a few months of Figma and a usability test under your belt may not prepare you well for your future employment. We always want to be growing, but make sure that you grow in a way that you don't need to backtrack your title in the future. But what I would say is, above all else, do take care of yourself. Write check-ins, mark problematic behavior. Around the 12-month mark, make that assessment. But if you're working in a toxic environment and you're genuinely hating your job, there is no time limit, just jump. I've also jumped a whole load of extra points and stuff that's helped me. I'm not going to go through it now, but feel free to ask me for this or take a look back afterwards. If you need to get in touch with me, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, it's 9Jamie. You can also email me. So just reach out to me anytime if you have any questions, and safe sailing.
That's absolutely amazing. Well done, Jamie. So nice, so insightful. Matt, I thought you raised a hand that you have a question. Is that clap or raise hand?
Sorry, that was a clap.
I'm only kidding.
Raise hands.
No, I like the term that you use for stakeholder experience designer. I think all of us are, at some point in our career, we're facing that, maybe even a lot of times. So yeah, well done. And yeah, I like how you said also that you keep those notes from kind of people that are praising you about your work, because I think that's something that we all need, because like sometimes you have bad days and good days, and it's good to remind yourself that you're doing a great job. Okay, I'll stop talking now. Guys, does anyone have any questions for Jamie?
Sorry, I do have a question now. Maybe it's more of a comment.
Perfect.
I turned on my camera, so I'm not a black screen anymore.
Yeah.
It just, the way you spoke there, I'm imagining that's my future self, and you sound a lot more confident and self-assured than I imagine myself in the future sounding. So I imagine that as you go through your career, you gain some of that confidence, but I'm wondering just how do you know, how do you match those two viewpoints, right? Coming in as a brand new person who's just sort of gaining their footing and kind of not being as confident about their decisions and choices, and then matching that with the advice that you're giving.
Oof, that's a really good question. You know, someone who'd offer some good insight into this would be Mike, because Mike saw me when I was a completely unconfident, unsure of myself person who was trying to get into design. You know, Mike had to remind me to call myself a designer because I was too afraid to call myself a designer. I saw it as like, oh, you can't be a designer unless you have lots of good work under your belt. I think I've changed a lot since getting into the industry. Actually being in a role is so transformative. When you do start off, you're going to be terrified, and it is going to be a whole lot at once. And you're definitely going to have moments where you just go, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. But it will just come automatically. Trust me. When you're actually working with people and you don't have time to think about it too much, and you have people who just trust what you say and trust that you've done the work, you'll build up your own confidence naturally. And the more you read and the more you surround yourself with design communities, the more you'll realize that we all feel like a sense of imposter syndrome, and we all look at the person. It's like climbing a mountain. You're climbing the mountain and you're looking up and you're going, oh, that person is so good. They've done so much. And we never look back and realize, there's still people at the bottom of that mountain that we've climbed. I would just say, just don't hide from the world. Like, put yourself out there, be friendly and collaborative, be interested in design, do a bit of reading. You don't have to go crazy. Just catch up with people, check out posts on LinkedIn that are not bullshit LinkedIn posts. And just find people that you want to be. So find influential designers, or find people, not just in design actually, in general, find people who have something special, and just build a roadmap of, how do I get to at least half of that person, or what aspects of them can I be? And just, build those things up. But ultimately, you're still going to be yourself at the end of it. There'll come a time when you pass this barrier and you won't even realize it, and you'll look back and think, gosh, I'm it now. I'm the designer. It's okay. And you're still going to be nervous and you're still going to be worried. You realize, like, oh, that's always going to be there. You just deal with that.
Sounds good. Thanks.
There's a really good video. Gosh, you just reminded me. It kept me going for a long time in my life. And maybe someone else can help me remember it. Ira Glass. I think Ira Glass did a video about writing. It's a really famous video.
I think I've seen it, where he talks about something about like doing cool shit. I think, was that it, where he
and just basically talks about, gosh, it's been so long since I watched it now. Basically says, everyone feels this way. It's completely normal and you just have to get over it, but you only start by just doing a little bit each time and forcing yourself. It's like I don't know, like exercising or something. You just do it a bit each day, and you just keep jumping through that ring of fire until you don't feel burned anymore. The fire is always going to be there, but you're still going to jump through it.
Can
I also just add to that? Yeah, Mike, you go ahead.
I want to say I'm the exact opposite. And as you saw from my presentation, without any knowledge, I had the experience. I had the confidence of of the Messiah. In my presentation, I said that you don't have to have confidence in you. You don't have to feel like you're the Messiah, but have the confidence that you will find the answers. Because as long as you have the knowledge and you have the toolkits and you have the processes, like you will find the way out. And don't have the, you don't need to have the confidence the first day at work that you know everything, because you don't. You actually need to know why. Usually new people go in any job and they want to change everything, and only to get disappointed and find that nothing can change, because everything that it is in a way, it's made there for like very specific reasons. So actually don't feel like you need the confidence to be the best. You actually just need the confidence that you can do things better. And I'm 1000% sure that everyone with a little bit of goodwill, even if they don't have like all the correct experience, the good experience or the good knowledge, they will find a way out if they want it. So like I'm very trusting also, which is not great. But yeah, I'd say if you don't have how's it called, confidence in you, have confidence in your process and the things you know, and the confidence in you will come very quickly.
Like Matt, you're here today. That's already a good start, you know? Like you wouldn't be here if you were completely lost. You're already on your journey.
Yes. The beginning, I guess. Yeah.
I would say more than the beginning if you're here. You've already made a commitment that you're doing this thing. You're in college. You've already started.
You're doing a level 9 course.
Yeah.
So
Let's be real here.
yeah.
Sure. But my background isn't in design, so all of these things are new, and you know I've been teaching now for a while. I mean, not that long. I had a different career before that, so even just the prospect of working in an office again seems a bit daunting to me at the moment. But anyway, it's good to hear all these things.
The best UX designers are the ones who have a career in something else, particularly if it has anything to do with knowledge or education or psychology. They make the best designers. It's a foundational thing. Do not undersell yourself. You've got to tell your story and make that part of your journey. You know, I talk about working in coffee, and I bring up how important that was in. Like I was doing so many customer user-based activities just working in coffee, and nobody would tell me that that's a UX career. So like, do not undersell yourself. That's a warning.
Yeah. I like echo what James says. I was not designing. I was coding super boring mainframe systems for Royal Bank of Scotland in Bangalore. So and I used to be a developer, and look at me, I hate them now. So so like, and like, trust me, I think it's good that you're curious and you invested yourself already in it. I think, don't worry, the fact that you're a bit nervous about it, I think that shows you care, and that's enough. I suppose that's enough.
My mentor told me that imposter syndrome is a sign that you're growing, and it's just that discomfort because you're growing beyond your safe, comfortable space. So imposter syndrome is healthy. It's actually a good thing to be feeling it. It does mean that you're onto something good.
I'm feeling good about it now.
Good.
You should.
Even I had that.
So
Even Mike has it.
Even. No, honestly, I always say that I'm a balloon blown up with confidence, and even I had like a lot of imposters. You know, I'm the kind of person that I will be in a karaoke, and every time I went, people closed their ears, left, and I still feel that this maybe made sense. I will be discovered. So I had the imposter syndrome. Yeah,
I have to say, Mike is like, he has that confidence. I went to a party with him, and he danced like he's gonna be on, I don't know, Britain's Got Talent or any Dancing with the Stars. Like, he danced without a care in the world, and I was the same. And he had so much confidence. He was just there enjoying himself. Mike, I think is this going in the book? I think it should. I think that should be the title of your next book. Confidence balloon.
I like it.
Mike, Rob, did you want to say something? Sorry, before.
No, I think everyone kind of covered it. I was just going to say that.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I think being concerned with your own skill set is a good quality, even if it's not very pleasant. I think, like, I came from psychology. I had no visual design background, and still feel imposter syndrome. I think when I started, the Dunning-Kruger curve, I use it in projects all the time, where you reach this point where you don't know what you don't know. About 3 months in, I was like, I've got this now. I get UX, I'm doing it. And that was actually the tipping point of like me just starting to learn all the stuff I don't know. So I'd say that the imposter syndrome kind of really kicked in then, but I think I'd much rather work with someone who was concerned about what they don't know rather than self-assured, because as everyone else said, I think like confidence is fine, absolutely, and it's a good thing and you develop it over time, but I think someone who isn't worried about updating what they think is stagnant, and I think it's a good trait, as I said, even though it's unpleasant. Yeah, that's it. I think I'm just echoing everyone else's points. And that was an excellent talk, Jamie. Really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Best presentation.
No, stop now.
Okay. But I want to say that I hope it was not for people here like that. The first time I went to a UX conference, I think this was like the when you're ready to jump off the designer who are gonna say no. Yeah, super imposter symptoms. I hope no one felt that tonight. And a lot of pretentiousness. Everyone was doing excellent. How's it called? Perfect job. So I was like, where am I going?
Guys, does anyone have any other questions, maybe for Jamie, or in relation to anything that we're talking about now?
Hi there. I have a question actually.
Yeah, Peter.
My face. Hi everyone. Just on the topic of courses, just anyone who's done a postgrad in Ireland, who's done one or is doing one now, can you recommend the course you've done or you are doing? Or what's a good postgrad course in Ireland for UX?
I went to Maynooth. It's a dot master's course. It's a year. It's called MSc Design Innovation.
Okay.
It's very, very research based and process based, and they teach a lot of tools to come up with that deep insight. It's very human centric. It's basically design thinking.
Yep.
The double diamond model, like they really go into it. They won't teach you necessarily the design aspect of it, how to draw shapes and use Figma and all. You probably have to teach, it depends if you want to go more into PM side of things or research side of things or design side of things. But I went there and I think it's a great course. You must look at their curriculum.
Cool.
Actually, if you're looking into it.
Yeah. Thanks, Pranjal. Anyone else? I think is
Mike posted.
Matt.
Yeah. Mike posted, yeah.
The spring.
We have the link, Springboard. Yeah.
Cool. I'll check that one out as well. Yeah. And sorry, Matt, you're on the course in TU Dublin.
I am. I got through it. I got to it through Springboard. That's one of the courses. I think there's another one. So I'm at TU Dublin, and I think I saw another one at DCU. Maybe there was a few on Springboard.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's in Blanchardstown, so it's a bit of a hike, but I've had a good experience with it. It's 1 year, and it's 3 modules each semester. It's meant to be part-time, but it's quite intensive. I don't know how somebody would have a full-time job and do the course, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be UX and interaction design. So there's a sort of a service design thinking module.
Yeah.
And then we have a web technologies module, graphic communications, interaction design. And so, and they all have pretty, you know, they all have major projects that we've had to do. So it's a load of work, I have to say. And each semester I've been surprised at the amount of stuff that I've learned by the end of the term, you know, more than I expected.
Yeah.
And I've been pretty happy with it. I think there is a lot of self-learning as well, you know, like I think somebody had mentioned, you know, they don't teach you how to use XD or Figma. They just point you like, these are the tools and you kind of have to learn those on your own, but there's a lot of other things that they're teaching you, and it's quite good. I would recommend it. And through Springboard, it's free.
What's the name of the course?
It's UX and interaction design, but it's technically it's a master's in creative media.
Yeah.
But it's in UX and interaction design.
Cool. Thanks very much.
I would say if you're going to be looking at any course, whatever it is, you'll get the most mileage out of courses that are more user-centric and based in research practices and being able to generate user insights, the likes of information architecture, task flow analysis. The UI side of things, you can learn that yourself. And actually, I think there's a much hungrier market for real analytical, more research-heavy UX than there currently is for just UI designers. Like, I have to remind people all the time, like Figma is a tool. It's not a process. It's an output. Like it's just Figma is just one way of doing an output. There's I see a lot of young people, you know, who get sold the hype marketing and get told, you know, they can be a designer in 1 week if they can use Figma. Like when you start an organization, it's really that knowledge that you need of how to actually get answers to problems and how to be able to analyze user data and feedback and insights and pull in all sorts of other things that are happening. But yeah, once you get a foundation in it, a lot of your learning then can be more self-directed, but you do need that foundation. Like I came from an industrial design background, so without realizing it, I got a lot of that foundation. I do think, yeah, like having that college education helped, and I would really recommend like putting the money into an in-person master's or an in-person course more so than just a boot camp that promises you a job in like 2-3 weeks, because there's money behind some of those things. A lot of like, I don't know, false prophets in UX from the marketing side.
Yeah, I know that now. Yeah, no, I did a diploma with the UX Design Institute, but I feel like a lot of employers are looking for people who've actually went to a university, did a level 8 or a level 9. So it's kind of.
It's never too early to just do projects and try out things. Your research can be super homegrown. It can be just your family and friends at the start, or, you know, friends of friends. I sometimes use friends of friends when I need low budget testing. So yeah, you don't need, there's no like rule that you're not allowed to start doing projects or get interested in problems until you have like all these skills. Because really, when you get more experience, it's more about, we know where to find all these toolkits and we know where to find all these things. And our skill is really just in being able to pick out which ones matter most and what do we need now. I don't know all the tools, like I don't know all the words, but I know where to find them and I know how to use them really fast. And that's a skill.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for the advice, Jamie. Thank you.
Peter, also you can try IDT. Myself and Rob, we did that one, a master's in UX. They're very good. As Rob said,
Just before the conference, they had an information session about the postgrad, not the masters, but the course for the masters.
Yeah. Oh, they're very good, very good. So if you need any, like, if you have any questions or anything, just we can jump on a call. I'll be happy to cover.
Yeah, cool. Great. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Cheers.
No problems.
That was my question.
I just wanted to ask Jamie a question actually. When you got into UX, did you find that there was a big gap between what you learned from industrial design going into UX when you were doing research and stuff?
Yeah, so I think this is a thing that like a lot of people can relate to. I'm guessing particularly most of my colleagues in industrial design, we were doing completely like made up projects and we were totally skimping on the research. And actually we were just making up research most of the time, to be perfectly frank, because we were in college and there was no stakes. It didn't really matter. Like we just kind of sidestepped around that part so we could do 3D models and fun stuff. I think one thing you realize very fast when you're actually in a job is, well, there are stakes, and also you can still make up things and fake things, but if you do, it's going to get you in the end. So I think I also learned that like all those really strict processes that they teach you in college and in courses, that they say, you know, you've got to do it this way, and if you want to learn this, you got to do it this way. Actually, in the real world, it's really fluid. So sometimes, you know, you don't have time to do lots of wireframes and lo-fi mockups. Like if there's already a component library, sometimes you've only got time to just build the real thing the first time. Or you get told like you have 3 days to do something, where in college it was like a 6-week project. You know, you don't get the luxury. There's a lot of other stakeholders and a lot of other people with their projects. So yeah, you learn that things are a lot more fluid, and the expectations are quite different from that perspective. I'm not saying hack everything, but you do find ways to do things that are proportional to the time and budget you're given. I don't even know if that answered your question. Like, it's so different. Like, even just, you know what? Even just talking to other people and managing relationships, that is so different to anything in college. You realize like you're in a room where not everyone thinks you're the golden child, and some people think you're just drawing pictures and I'm here trying to manage this business, and you're like, you're telling me your thing's more important. Like there's a lot, you know, there can be that too. So relationship management is a big part of working in design. I would say like a fractional amount of time is actually me spent in Figma making designs.
Okay, thanks.
But it's great. It's great. I love it so much. And even when I'm sad, I love it. It's like, I love it so much.
That's brilliant. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jamie, for covering all questions. Guys, does anyone else have any questions for any one of us? Feel free to ask. There's just a few of us left. Well, anyways, if that's it, Jamie, once again, well done. And Mike, other guys are gone, but well done, everyone. If you're all okay, we can even close this call. Let me just say a few words as we end this call.
Yeah. Oh, before,
sorry?
Is it LJ has a hand raised?
Ah, sorry, yes. I didn't see that. Yeah, sorry.
Hi, no problem. No
Thanks,
problem.
Jamie.
Hi, thank you so much for organizing this kind of conference. Honestly, I don't want to go. I want it to be on and on and on. I'm really enjoying
okay.
it. Thank you so much. So I want to ask Jane, like, how many projects or how many case studies do we need in a portfolio? How many projects, how many case studies do we need in a portfolio?
Sorry, can you please repeat how many projects in portfolio?
Yes.
Mike will reply as a hacker, but I've got my past 2 jobs. I got them with one really extensive project, and what I did was I created smaller ones that they were personal projects that I added there. I made sure in the portfolio that I highlighted the main one as the most important, and they were actually the job that I got. It was not my current job, my previous job. I was asked to present 2 projects, and I said that in 1 hour, I think 2 projects it will just reach the surface. So I said I prefer to present one and go deeper. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think it depends a lot on you. But I think you will need at least one, like 1 or 2, you should be okay. And make sure you add a few things. Sometimes it can be even things that you wrote or things that are relevant with UX and you show your perspective. So this can help a lot because people don't have a lot of time to see your portfolio.
Okay.
And sometimes showing that you have more than just 1 or 2 will add value even if they don't go in deep to see them.
Okay, thank you so much. Another question, does it matter if it's like a service design case study or e-commerce case study? Does it really matter?
Depends on who you apply for. So, you know, if it's a company that has more of an interest in one of the 2 of those, you can tailor your portfolio to match what they're looking for. And that's actually a really good thing you can do. Is if there are certain jobs that you're really interested in, you know, try to match up their job description with highlights of your portfolio. So if they're looking for specific skills, show those skills. Even if the project is not totally related, show how you can offer those skills for that job. But when you're getting started off, you don't need to be super particular. Like, people understand that you're not going to have a lot of work to show. They're more interested in that you have the potential to do that work.
Okay.
So really, at starting off, I had one project and then my final year college project, but I also put in like some stuff that I wrote as well, like articles that I came up with, because I wanted to show that I could think about problems as well. That was my way of kind of, even though I didn't have a lot of work to show, I wanted to show that if you hire me, like, I can do this stuff. I just need to build up that experience. So and don't be too worried about like ticking all the check boxes just because you saw someone's portfolio who had like this thing done, they did personas and they did that thing. That's all people want to see, is that you actually thought about the problem and you tried stuff to get to the solution. You didn't just jump straight to a solution.
Okay, so it doesn't really matter if you don't get to the stage of usability testing or prototyping.
Some projects you won't get that far, or some projects like some of the projects we did as part of our mentorship program, we could only do like limited testing because obviously it wasn't going to be a live product. But if you feel like you need to do more of that, then don't go and do it. Like go ask friends and family. And they don't have to be really like fancy setup tests. But what will be good is that you learn a bit about what works and what doesn't, and how to ask questions in a way that people will give you an honest answer. That's a really good skill to have. So send out applications and see if you're getting responses. And if you're not getting responses, use that as a sign of like, okay, what do I need to change, or what can I add? Don't be afraid to apply for jobs. Just do it.
Thank you.
Like, just apply for everything, honestly.
Thank you. Okay. I'll connect to you on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, of course.
Connect with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Jamie, for covering this, and Mike. Ajay, I sent you something there in chat. It's basically an article that Mike, Colin, and James, one of our other mentors, they spoke about what hiring managers are looking for in junior designers. So maybe you will find something that might interest you. And there,
I don't say it on the chat, but yeah.
No, I think I sent her directly.
I'll
include it. Yeah, I'll include it for everyone.
No, it's fine. I just thought.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, just in case someone else wants to have a read as well. Guys, do you have any other questions? Anyone? Okay. Now, if that's it, we can bring it up to the end. I will just say a few words now to close everything. As we end the event today, I would like to thank for all of you for joining the conference. Just the fact that you were on this call today shows that you all have a strong interest in learning more about UX, and I hope we'll all use this knowledge today to create better products tomorrow. Also, people that maybe will be watching this after we post it on YouTube. Basically, more than anything, I would just like to say thank you once again to Mike, Colin, Pranjal, Rob, and Jamie for sharing their expertise with us. People like you five are extremely, extremely valuable to our UX3 community. And audience, thank you so much for your time and your engagement tonight. I hope you all had fun and learned something. And yeah, that's it from me. The recording of the conference will be posted tonight or tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow. It's very late. I'll send it to you by email, and that's it from me. Yeah, I hope you all had fun.
Thank you very much.